Marvel's Midnight Suns released at the end of 2022, December to be exact. Not a great time to launch a big game if you want a lot of coverage and sales, and the disparity between its critical reception and financial success goes to show as much. That's ultimately why I'm making this video. I originally didn't have much interest in analyzing everything from the shingles to the floorboards, but because I was spending so much of my time with the game anyway, well, here we are. You know what, fine, I'll fucking review it, damn it. This is the most recent game from Firaxis, the developers most known for their XCOM Revival series. I've played through and enjoyed both XCOM 1 and 2, have a fondness for the tactics genre in general, and I happen to be in a superhero mood, so this was perfect for me at this point in my life. However, although I really like Midnight Suns, I think it's a hard game to pitch. It's not even close to as punishing as the XCOM series, nor does it have much depth when it comes to your home base, so it's not going to attract the hardcore fanbase as well as an XCOM 3 could have. But on the other hand, it's a tactics game, and given that nearly every turn-based tactics title gets a god-awful trailer that barely shows any actual gameplay in favor of cinematic action scenes, I'd imagine the majority of the gaming population aren't as partial to this genre as I am. Basically what I'm saying is, when trying to explain its less than stellar sales, it's both too simple and too complex at the same time. When coming right from XCOM, it's easy to spot the adjacent mechanics and ideas. You can choose which mission you want to play from quite a few at a time, you can pick which characters to bring in with you. If any are injured, they won't be as combat ready as the non-injured heroes, but you can use your Healy device to fix them up. You can send someone out on a special ops mission, you can research new technologies, you can purchase equipment and upgrades to your home base that will help you down the line, and there's even a way to interrogate enemies. The thing is though, every single one of those familiar sounding mechanics are all surface level. Interrogations are literally just a single use of a card, seem to trigger at random after you research and acquire the Abbey upgrade, and simply give more loot, like credits or something, right then and there. Sure, it costs a card play, but it's certainly nowhere near as risky as taking back an alien alive in XCOM 1. Chimera Squad dumbed that down a bit too, but that's a spin-off game many fans of the series want less of, not more. Including me. Research in XCOM would vary in usefulness, and would impact not one, but many things potentially, like being able to construct a few weapons, pieces of armor, or even lead to other valuable research later on. These choices were important in keeping your soldiers alive, as there are indeed wrong answers. If your squads don't have the stronger guns near the end because you didn't choose the right research tasks, it'll be a lot harder to beat the game, and you might start up a downward spiral, losing your best soldiers and being worse off because of their deaths, then being forced to utilize new recruits which don't have the level ups their superiors had, and yeah, it's a brutal system, if you choose to go without save scumming, that is. That death mechanic wouldn't really work here, since these are specific superheroes that you form relationships with, so there's never a risk of being unprepared and losing out on your best characters. In addition to that, the time limit crunch looms over the entire game in XCOM, influencing all of your decisions, whereas in Midnight Suns, there isn't one. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, please don't write a comment that I'm criticizing that aspect of it, I'm setting up a different point. Time being an ever-important factor in XCOM means many other systems can utilize it as a sort of currency, one of the most recurring examples being research tasks. The timetables attached to them will weigh heavily in your choice each time. Maybe waiting 10 or 16 days on something might cause you to think hard on if you should tackle something else first. Well, in Midnight Suns, everything takes a single day, and because there's no time limit, it doesn't really matter what you select. You'll get everything at some point, just pick the next thing, who cares. The Hero Ops missions are probably the best example of a severely reduced and simplified XCOM thing. In XCOM 2, you'd have to pick which squad mate you'd be comfortable with losing for a while, potentially two, and an engineer or something if you wanted to assure they'd stay safe. This also has a timetable, and the rewards for them are varied, some of them being critical to not losing, especially with War of the Chosen near the mid-game, meaning there's quite a few layers to the decision-making process here. Missions in XCOM 2 can sometimes come out of the blue, and I've absolutely had it happen before where one of my preferred squad mates was unavailable due to the covert ops. There was also a risk of failure on some of them, either being wounded, ambushed, or captured, the latter resulting in the enemy extracting info from that soldier and gaining strength, and would require the player to undergo a rescue mission to retrieve said abducted squad mate. Getting ambushed also provides a unique slice of gameplay, as you'll need to rush to an evac point to keep those recruits alive. There's nothing like any of that in the Hero Ops of Midnight Suns. It feels like an obligatory carryover in name only, oh why not throw this in there too device. Every operation lasts one day, will always be successful with zero stakes, isn't that important to your success long term, will never lead to more gameplay, and there aren't any interesting decisions to make on picking which op to undergo. More often, you won't even have enough intel, hey look at that, another XCOM term, to have options at all. It'll just be a useless nothing with everything grayed out. To its credit, that single day of the hero being on the supposed operation does mean certain missions aren't available to be selected, since they were required for them, but if this isn't even going to offer a meaningful choice for the player, why not attempt to tie a few of these in with the general missions at the holotable? Midnight Suns has unique challenge missions for each hero that unlock a few things for them once you max out their friendship, and they're all, mostly, very well put together. They not only restrict the gameplay enough to help you understand how to maximize that hero's strengths and gimmicks, almost like a puzzle, they're just a fun change of pace overall. I always looked forward to them, and not simply for the rewards they gave, but also for the gameplay they provided. Why not do something similar for the Hero Ops, a nice quick solo mission? Or connect a few of the major hero operation plot points to a specialized level to pick at the holotable after a while? The presentation of it all is already lacking, given that you're interacting with a fairly boring pause screen, but it also fails to sell that these are even happening in the first place. The hero you chose is still there after you've selected them, and is back home at night after your mission for the day is done. If we're being generous, maybe the idea is that while we're doing our general mission with the team, that's when they're doing their solo excursion? I think it would have been for the best for there to at least be an absence of that character in the Abbey at night, to make it feel like your choice affected something. No, as it is now, the War Room, as it's called, more functions as another thing, another avenue for upgrading or acquiring cards for heroes, and another criteria to meet, like some research requiring you to send Captain America or Wolverine out on a Hero Ops mission before unlocking. There's a crap ton of unique names for these, all with their own flavor text, which hint at other Marvel heroes not featured in this game helping out around the world in their own ways. As far as I'm concerned, because nothing about the Hero Ops is interesting from a presentation, gameplay, or decisions perspective, this doesn't even come close to justifying its existence. It's a surface-level menu screen that I wouldn't mind seeing removed from the game entirely. It has no depth, no consequences, no bearing on the Abbey, half the time you won't even have enough intel to do anything with it, and near the end, you'll only be able to send your highest leveled characters anyway, removing one of the core reasons to do it. You know what the Hero Ops really reminds me of? Drew Doodle's review of Luigi's Mansion, as it's marvelously mediocre. Get it? That worked on 2 levels. Buying upgrades for the Abbey, your home base, initially is a decision, since you'll be short on money, but after a while it'll just be another box to check off. Another unlock that's fun to unlock, I guess. The benefits can be felt in battle, sure, but if you're someone who appreciates the other half of XCOM, the base management part, there's nothing here that'll excite you. Midnight Suns, in almost every respect, is a linear level up bar after linear level up bar, all of which you have ample time to fill, and with only 1 or 2 edge case exceptions, none you can lose progress with once you've gained it. Characters never have a chance of dying and being permanently removed from the game, not that I'd want them to, but still, and they will get stronger by leveling up. It's not up for debate. It's a certainty of playing the game. Either you take them on missions and it happens directly, or you neglect them and the XP share keeps them semi-close to the Hunter's level. Your research level will increase, you will acquire more cards, your training level will go up, and etc, etc. Choosing a mission doesn't have any give and take. You can grind out cards, upgradable materials, and loot in general missions for as long as you like, then tackle the story whenever you're ready, whereas in XCOM, it felt like you had to think about what would be best in the short and the long term to eventually win the day. Even in Chimera Squad, they had the anarchy meter to keep track of for each location in the city. That idea would have been so cool for a superhero game like Midnight Suns, keeping track of how areas of the world are doing with the supervillain threats about, and Midnight Suns and Chimera Squad even share the holotable window dressing. It was right there for Axis. But no, instead with Midnight Suns, there are no wrong answers, something Blade says himself when you upgrade your cards.
Don't stress it too much. There's no wrong answers here.
He also says not everyone wants his advice, but they're gonna get it.
Not everyone wants my advice, but they're gonna get it either way.
It doesn't relate to this point, but he said it like 100 times in my playthrough, so fuck you, viewer, you'll have to hear it too.
Not everyone wants my advice, but they're gonna get it either way.
This won't be the last time I bring up the many repeated dialogue lines.
We've got no excuses here.
Now, I don't think this is all a bad thing. Follow me here, the discussions I have in these videos don't always equal a complaint or criticism. The Hero Ops honestly could be taken out completely for my money, but everything else is fine. It's kinda nice to have this relaxed approach to things, especially given the Marvel license. I do think they could have made the region-based anarchy meter work really well here, but I can also respect them wanting a game in their catalog that doesn't feature an oppressive time limit system. This game feels like its own thing, absolutely, and that's great, but you can see how this all might turn XCOM fans away, considering this is what we got instead of some type of XCOM 3. If all that wasn't enough, the combat side of things might also do the job, given how seemingly simplified many facets are to give way to the card system. Movement isn't an integral part of each turn for each character, you'll use cards and be placed into the right spots automatically, and your default one move per turn is mostly used to reposition a hero for an attack or get out of the way of a danger zone. There's no cover system present, which makes sense given the many other mechanics at play like counter, resist, and block, and you're placed into a fairly cramped arena for every battle, unlike the spacious environments to roam around in and take advantage of with XCOM. When looking at the game purely from a Firaxis comparison perspective, it's easy to see how this could all seem like a downgrade to some people. If you're a fan of Marvel and can deal with a slightly less in-depth and more forgiving strategy game, you might be over the moon about Midnight Suns, however. Oh my god, a good comic book game that isn't strictly action-adventure? Well, that's how I feel, but I doubt everyone else shares that same sentiment. Midnight Suns isn't as complex or punishing as others in the genre, sure, but the deck-building tactics combat on offer, while enjoyable for me, is still a pretty big leap to make if you're not into these types of games in the first place. Maybe that's why so much of your playtime is spent talking with heroes at your home base and forging relationships, to not scare the casual players away early on. The combat to dialogue and cutscenes ratio for Midnight Suns is pretty egregious, favoring the non-combat side to a staggering degree, especially in the first half of the game, and especially in the opening 2 hours. Be prepared for that, anybody who has interest in Midnight Suns, as even though the tactical turn-based fights are fun and worthwhile, which I'll talk about in detail soon, unless you choose to skip dialogue and cutscenes, you won't be engaging with that half of the game in the beginning as much as you might want to. There is a dog that you can pet though, as well as a cat, both giving you rewards of some kind, and petting Charlie the dog actually makes her stronger in battle. How can you say no to that? I fucking knew it. You people are so easy. You put a dog in the game and you can pet him and there you go. Instant sale. The game overall is split into 2 distinct halves. Superhero Lifesim, along with exploring the Abbey grounds for secrets and solving mysteries, and the combat encounters, which revolve around working with the cards you have in your hand to take out enemies and finish objectives. As much as I like it now, the card system initially worried me. I distinctly remember going through that tutorial on my Steam Deck and felt a sense of dread and regret wash over me, thinking I had just wasted my money and might need to refund the game when I got back home. I'm not in love with other video games that take this deck-building approach, like Slay the Spire for instance, and it does have a mobile game feel when looking at screenshots, so I really didn't think I'd be won over, especially considering how much I appreciated the cover system and environments of games like XCOM, Showgunners, and others in the same vein. However, you do have some room to move around and make decisions based on positioning, so it isn't as boring as a true JRPG where they stand around and whack each other. Sorry fans of the genre, I have a really low tolerance for that kind of stuff. We all have different tastes, you understand. Also, hopefully I'll have a video on this game at some point in my life, but my god, I just hate playing JRPGs. There's not a never-ending grind for better gear and upgrades, you can't use real-world money to do anything besides buy cosmetics and DLC, and the visuals and depth on offer are far better than some cash-grab iPhone game, so the surface-level mobile comparison is out too. I know I've been harping on about the lack of depth in Midnight Suns up to this point, but really, there is quite a lot here. The level of complexity is only a step down compared to the beefier entries in the subgenre. That tutorial was scary, sure, but as I pushed through and kept at it, the game continued to get better and better, unwaveringly pulling back its layers, successfully ridding me of my initial worry. And then some, as I continue to play the game for over 100 hours across 2 playthroughs. The game manages to stay engaging even after all that time, thanks to its plethora of statuses, buffs and nerfs, card combinations to try, both when it comes to an individual hero's deck, and how well it plays when working with others in your team, and the shocking number of gimmicks to work around, not just for your heroes, but for the opposition as well. Even into the 3rd act, there were more and more hurdles being thrown my way, new enemies and attacks to contend with, and your roster of heroes keeps growing all the way until the very end. That's to say nothing of the impressive variety of objectives for the general and story missions, all of which still sliding in with the card formula, but feeling distinct enough to make you think you're doing something different. Many center around the object or enemy in question being protected by a shield-wielding enemy, but there are plenty of other objectives that don't, and even with the protectors in play, you can sometimes sneak around that roadblock with proper uses of your knockback and environmental attacks. Out of the many in the game, there's 2 objectives in particular that I looked forward to most. The first is a modification of survive X amount of turns, where you get your card play refunded every single KO, and some enemies give you another card when defeated. This lets you combo and keep chaining KOs until you've exhausted your options. It's really satisfying to take so many enemies out in a single turn, continuing long past what you're normally able to in regular encounters. My second favorite type of objective is when you'll need to down a villain or kill enemies to reduce the heroism cost of an expensive mission card. For instance, the bell tower level when you fight Venom, the card to repair the bell costing 10 heroism, but becoming cheaper each time you get Venom to 0 HP. There's one in Storm's DLC that's even better, as the card to rescue Dahlia starts at 20 and reduces with each enemy KO'd. Very fun. When zooming in on the cards and combat side of things a bit more, the rules and restrictions for building your deck make enough sense. You might not be able to put in all the cards you want for your 8-card deck, given some other limitations, but it's a decent attempt to balance things to not make the deck building process an afterthought in favor of spamming the best cards, and it might save new players from inadvertently screwing themselves over. You can't have more than one legendary, no more than 2 of the same card, no more than 4 cards of the same type, you must have at least 1 of each type, and you have to use all 8 slots. No hyper-efficient, smaller-sized decks here. I could easily see, if not for these restrictions, a fresh player choosing like 6 heroic cards, since they deal the most damage, and get utterly destroyed thanks to their inability to play them in the first place. The heroic abilities, which are on the whole the most powerful and impactful, cost heroism, which is kind of like an in-game currency tallied up in the lower right hand of the battle screen. Attack and skill cards grant heroism. In the lower left it'll show a +1 or +2 and such. It's a give and take. Play attack and skill cards, which have their own effects and benefits, to afford playing heroic abilities, which can swing the tide of battle dramatically. Some heroes and deck builds don't rely on these cards quite as much, and can do just fine with skills and attacks, but for the most part, heroics are where the real damage is done. You get 3 card plays to work with per turn, barring quite a few specific exceptions, which can be played in whatever way you like, 3 for Hunter or 1 for each character, sure, whatever works. You're given 1 move by default, which can reposition a hero to make an attack more effective, avoid an oncoming danger zone, and eventually use your move to shove enemies backwards. This can be used to knock them into the terrain, into another enemy, into a different enemy's future attack, into another teammate for extra damage once you unlock an Abbey upgrade, or, the funniest of all, into a pit or off a ledge to their deaths. Since the latter is an instant KO, it's not a guarantee that they'll fall overboard. The likelihood is based on how much health they currently have. One time I got really lucky at the end of a tough mission. I web-tossed one Hydra Mystic into their ally summoning circle on a 62% chance, then shoved the final Mystic into the portal at 40% or so chance. Oh my god, amazing. I love knocking enemies off ledges in games. There's a lot of statuses and key phrases to keep in mind as you play. I think going through them all would be overkill, but just a few off the top of my head: taunt, block, resist, counter, cure, fast, marked, vulnerable, bind, concealed, weak, bleed, corruption, stun, and so many more. Some are exclusive to certain heroes, and others will prop up all the time. For instance, Captain Marvel is the only one that has the binary gimmick, and Ghost Rider is the only one with the souls counter. However, Quick is something almost every hero could have in their deck. It just means your card play is refunded if you KO someone with it. Since the deck you're pulling from is shuffled, you're given 2 redraws per turn too, which helps things feel a little less unfair. If you, say, drew all heroism costing cards with 0 heroism, you can redraw and hopefully get a skill or attack card to get things rolling. Some cards might have a redraw benefit, much like Iron Man, whose gimmick revolves around it. When you're out of moves, or even earlier if you like, you'll end your turn, and the enemies take theirs, all at once just like you did, with some exceptions depending on the buffs in play or villains you're up against. The order of enemy attacks overall is rather quite elegant, but I won't get into that right now. I'll save that for later. You'll likely see the enemies get reinforcements after every turn is completed, some having literally no health and can be taken out with a single hit, which, as you can probably guess, works well with cards that have the word quick on them, and others being non-minion types that boast an actual health bar, or even some armor or a shield that needs to come off first. Lastly, but also not even close, on your turn you can use the heroism that you'd normally spend on cards on objects in the play space, such as toppling over a telephone pole, vaulting over a platform in the middle to smack some fool, sliding a dumpster into someone's dump truck, and igniting explosives. There's a lot of really fun ways to take advantage of the terrain that you don't normally see, which I, naturally, absolutely adore. It's not even something that feels tacked on, either. Spider-Man's gimmick takes full advantage of the environmental attacks, as many of his cards make them better and grant you more moves to reposition yourself. While killing a dude by throwing newspapers at him or dropping an Acme-style bundle of pianos onto someone's head is funny as fuck, the knockback stuff was what really won me over. I can't tell you how happy I was when I first sent a Hydra agent into a bottomless pit. That feeling was amplified a few hours later when I learned to use Ghost Rider and Magic's cards in tandem, sending a goober into a portal that Magic had cast, only to shoot them out on the other side, plummeting into Ghost Rider's gap in the earth, presumably falling into the depths of hell itself. I could honestly go on and on about the many cool gimmicks to each individual hero, and I guess I will later, but as of right now, I've already over-explained the combat as far as I'm concerned. The point of all this was to be a rundown of the basic combat mechanics, showing off some cool stuff in the process, while also attempting to drive the point home that, while yes, the depth on offer might leave something to be desired in relation to the overall tactic strategy genre, it's still complex enough that it could easily scare people away who aren't used to playing something where you don't simply control a character in third person and punch things. It's almost a shame, since many of the more simplified parts of Midnight Suns seem specifically tuned to appeal to a wider audience. No time limits, heroes can't die, and not a whole lot in terms of out-of-game strategy, outside your deck of course, but it's hard to convey all of that in a trailer, and it doesn't change the fact that this is, in fact, a top-down strategy game first and foremost. For my money, although I do have some problems with the game, which I'll expand more on in a bit, Marvel's Midnight Suns succeeds in the only way I ever needed it to. It exists. No, seriously, the fact that we actually get to play a competent turn-based tactics game with Marvel characters is outstanding. I feel like I've been pretty consistent in my stance that I want there to be more licensed games utilizing a different genre other than action-adventure, which is why I have a special place in my heart for Aliens Dark Descent, even though it has a myriad of its own problems. Midnight Suns definitely is a good game in my eyes, but the main reason it captivated me was by simply using its source material in an interesting way. I'll always be appreciative whenever comic book games do a collaboration team-up, such as in X-Men Legends and Marvel Ultimate Alliance. It's a nice way to utilize the expansive universe that's already right there for the taking, concocting a story and providing an excuse for why certain casts of characters have to meet up and work together. It's also a decent avenue to learn some of the history and lore behind these heroes, especially for someone like me who doesn't read many comics. Sure, Nico, tell me all about the Runaways and your backstory. I literally have no idea who you are. All of that is great on its own, but to use this team-up narrative for a deck-building card game? Even if I didn't love the gameplay on offer, it's hard not to respect a company when they try something different like this. Thankfully, I do love the gameplay on offer, so I see this as an absolute win. Oh god, I promise I won't fucking reference Marvel movies at you after this. Jesus Christ, I don't even like that line. I think it's way overused and just kinda sucks. Anyway, there's a lot of ways to earn more cards, but the most common is by turning your recently acquired coil into a booster pack of sorts, allowing you to select one of 3 available, then 2 of the 4 available, and eventually 2 of the 5 available. And why not? You can re-roll some of them after the fact near the endgame. More often than not, the cards will be exclusively for characters you just used in the previous mission, but when you acquire the coil via other means, it could be for anyone. The joy of seeing a new card and getting to read what it does and think about how I'd use it in relation to others reminds me of another card game I've played and liked, but this time in real life. No, not Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or anything like that, but Legendary, a deck builder card game that also uses the Marvel license. The base game comes with a decent number of heroes and scenarios, but they've also released a ton of expansions over the years, some bigger and some smaller. The rush of opening a box and seeing those new cards, reading what powers and unique gimmicks the added heroes have, and what the villains do? Oh man, amazing. I even bought 2 more when making this video, Guardians of the Galaxy and... hey, Midnight Suns, what a coincidence. The latter expansion is really cool, and it kinda made me wish some of these guys were in this game, like Werewolf by Night for instance. God dang, he's so fun. Don't try to get me into a dedicated card battler, by the way, I'm simply not interested. But I can easily admit to appreciating the card aesthetic and deck building found in both Legendary and Midnight Suns. Hell, Dominion is a common favorite among me and my friends when we're together. Building and utilizing a set of cards is fun in moderation, and the Midnight Suns properly scratched that itch for me. Those endless combo turn missions are the best example, just slamming down card after card. But even in normal encounters, it's damn near intoxicating when you play your hand in a clever way. There's an allure to chaining together a great series of card plays, in all of the card games I've mentioned, and it's a big part of the charm for Midnight Suns. It's even cooler here, since throwing down a big damage-dealing card like Ghost Rider's Hell Ride shows off a bitchin' visual to bask in the glory of. What a spectacle. I adore all of this so much that one of the main things I kept thinking about during my time was, I wish there were more. There are 4 DLC characters, but I consider them a part of this roster at this point. No, I'm craving another full game with another batch of heroes and villains. Imagining the Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and on with this game's framework sounds amazing. Fighting villains such as Venom, Sabretooth, and Crossbones is cool as hell, but thinking about Thanos, sans Gauntlet of course, Doctor Doom, Magneto, fuck man, Silver Surfer, Galactus, Vision, Ultron? I want it all. Hook it into my veins. Please, 2K, let Firaxis make another one. The strict stat increase level ups for each character didn't do a whole lot for me though, and that goes 3 ways, in isolation, in comparison to XCOM's Build a Soldier tree, and in relation to the rest of the level up stuff found elsewhere in Midnight Suns. I'll admit that they feel a lot better in New Game Plus on a higher difficulty selection. It's a relief to see a hero pop off in the middle of a battle, but since the enemies scale to your party's average level, and heroes not used in battle will auto XP share to not fall behind Hunter too much, in a normal playthrough, the leveling system isn't especially exciting. That's the passive way to make your character stronger. The other, more active approach is to upgrade and mod your favorite cards. When first starting out, and most of the first playthrough, I'd say the gobbledygook of tracking your heroic, skill, and attack essences, along with blueprints and such to create copies of cards to upgrade cards and so on, does get a little tedious, but thankfully it's a 1 or 2 time thing. You can only upgrade a card once, and it can only be given one single mod, so you won't be endlessly keeping your head above water by continuously beefing up your cards. Besides the essences, you also have 2 other currencies, credits and gloss, the former being used to buy upgrades to the Abbey and is required to have daily sparring sessions in the yard, and the latter being used solely for cosmetics and gifts for your hero friends. It definitely is a lot, and in the first 10 hours or so, if not more, feels overwhelming and messy, but it balances out and simply fades away into the background as you keep trucking away. Sure, you might have to salvage a few cards individually to get the essence you need, which is kind of clunky given you can't do it while in the upgrade screen. You'll have to keep backing all the way out and going into the pause menu each time, which gets even messier if you want to craft an ability, salvage stuff, then upgrade cards, as that's 1 pause menu and 2 workbenches to walk back and forth from. And sure, you might pick specific missions for their rewards, like credits or intel or what have you, if you know you're kinda low, but I'm being completely genuine when I say that all that stuff didn't weigh in my mind too much in that first playthrough, let alone the second. Since there's no time restriction, nor pressure of failure, and a set limit on how many times a card can be improved, like I said, I never felt like I was put on the treadmill of feverishly working to get resources. Sure, the randomized nature of the card unlocks, with some being modded and others basic, might get a little on your nerves if you're hunting and hoping for a specific ideal ability, but personally I never ran into that feeling since I was fine with upgrading and modding them on my own if I didn't get lucky. I do have a few quibbles with how modding works, but I'll get to that later. Gloss was the only thing I was kind of scrounging for, but that's purely because I liked having a lot of outfit choices to wear, both for my character and my teammates. I do think it's pretty harsh that the base game only gives you 1 outfit per hero, 2 if you count the Midnight Suns unlock, and the 2 or 3 extra ones are in the deluxe or whatever edition, but there are truthfully a lot of palettes to unlock and choose from, and their base game costumes are what I preferred most of the time anyway. The many looking normal Abbey clothes you can purchase for everyone is also a great touch, as is letting the game rotate them daily on its own, and allowing you to still keep your combat suit on. Since the main character, Hunter, is a relic of the past, being brought back from the dead essentially, 300 years after she died, and is overly stiff and combat-driven, I thought it was funnier to pretend she'd prefer staying in her battle gear at all times. It's always hilarious to see her in her armor sitting next to fucking Blade in a t-shirt. I did the same thing early on with Carol too, but that's only because her DLC outfit is the only fucking one that gives her long hair for some reason. Besides being able to change Captain Marvel's hair, the only thing I would have liked to see are exclusions. I love the idea of waking up and being in a new color or outfit, but sorry, I'm not super into seeing the fucking Demon Child costume, the one everyone agrees smells and looks like shit, show up randomly depending on the RNG. Guess I'll go change, defeating the purpose of the daily random attire in the first place. I kinda dug the anti-venom one, but because it defaults to you wearing the headpiece it comes with, I'd still find myself going into the menu to remove it. As much as I can say it's easy to look past the many currencies and resource stuff, the game does make it a point to reward you with them and feed that dopamine drip mindset when exploring the Abbey. If opening literal chests to gain loot wasn't enough, Midnight Suns employs the gamer words left and right. You know, rare, legendary, epic. Wait, what the fuck words were you thinking? It's hard not to roll your eyes when this stuff gets slapped around, but I can't complain too much. Rarity being conveyed is fine, so some labeling is in order, I suppose. Instead of opening a silver or gold chest, it'll be normal, rare, or epic. I know I said earlier that the game is divided into two halves, the Lifesim and home-based exploration on one end, and the turn-based combat on the other, but if I'm being honest, it's not an even split. Even if you lump the Abbey ground puzzles and riddles into their own category to make a total of 3 distinct gameplay sections, it still doesn't look great for the main meat of the game. The tactical turn-based combat, the supposed selling point of the game, on a first playthrough might take up a third of your playtime, and depending on which stage of the game you're in, the ratio looks even worse. Here's the basic gameplay loop for an average day. Wake up, talk to characters and see if they have requests for you, do the morning routine Abbey stuff, such as assigning new research, acquiring more cards, upgrading them if you'd like, buying items for combat if needed, daily sparring if you can afford it, and maybe check the Abbey gift shop. After that's all squared away and there are no info dumps or cutscenes, select a mission at the holotable, go on a combat encounter, which might range from 5 minutes to a half hour, then come back. Nighttime, you might have the option to hang out with the hero, maybe join a club meeting that has its own lengthy dialogue back and forths. Then afterwards, if you're up for it, explore the Abbey grounds for secrets and unlocks. There are some progression gates that prevent you from doing it all at once, but it'll mostly be up to you to decide when you've wandered through woods and cemeteries enough for one night. Then you go to sleep to start it all over again tomorrow. Remember, all of that is a typical non-story heavy day. If something big just happened the night before, or you're gearing up for something soon, expect a lot more in the way of conversations and cutscenes. I don't think you could do a whole lot to shorten up each other section of the overall gameplay loop without removing some of the charm each section presents. If nobody had anything to say about the current events, that'd be lame, and if the Abbey grounds were far tinier and less secret and puzzle-dense, that'd feel tacked on. I guess I would have preferred if the missions themselves were a bit longer. When you're really into your team and are happy with the deck and build you went with, you might want to keep going, keep pushing the strategy to its fullest. For instance, I was having a ball with my mace cards, given they increase in damage each time you play one, but even though we were hitting our stride as a team, there wasn't enough here, and we kinda dominated without even getting to 3rd gear. Many story missions have more than one phase to them, which is great, and at times does facilitate that exhausting drawn-out fight feel that I'm asking for, but those are the exception. Even in one of the 3rd act near finales, I had 10 heroism and was fitting my mace to be a complete powerhouse when it abruptly ended. 3 pillars was the goal. I guess I misread and was hoping it was 4. I just wanted more reinforcements to fight. Because the game highly incentivizes completing missions in as few turns as possible, you're more likely to choose deck builds that are more ideal for shorter fights, which already kind of makes some cards less than optimal, such as the maces I mentioned earlier, but even more, the better you do, the less you play. Hell, on Ultimate Difficulty, I did the Venom Bell Tower level in like 2 turns. It was kinda cool, I guess, but also a bit underwhelming. Upping the difficulty can only do so much, and I have my own problems with the increased enemy health pools given how they interact with a few heroes' gimmicks, but like many other things in Midnight Suns, a second playthrough really helps alleviate minor pacing issues, allowing you to curate your playtime a bit. After all, you can skip cutscenes, you can skip dialogue, and you don't need to do anything in the Abbey grounds, at least I'm pretty sure anyway. This doesn't solve anyone's hunger for long encounters, but it does significantly help sway the ratio of your playtime overall towards combat. Choosing to mainline the combat encounters and go all in with some of the deck creation and tinkering side of things feels fantastic, but I still think it's valid to talk about that first playthrough since it is a rather long game, and after they get to the credits, most people will likely uninstall it or put it on their shelf for a decade. With all of that in mind, I would have preferred more time spent in the combat bits. A 3rd phase to some of the story encounters, or even a 2nd to some of the general missions would have been welcome. Some are more difficult than others, as the labels of easy, normal, and hard go to show, but those don't mean length, but rather enemy type and quantity, and in all honesty, the objectives found within don't always match up with the fight you're yearning for. I can't tell you how let down I was when first trying out my full bind party, as I had just stocked up Doctor Strange and Venom with those cards to take advantage of Hunter's merciless attack, only to see that the gimmick of this battle is to spend a card play and 2 heroism to discard your hand and draw more cards while refunding 2 card plays. Well, there goes my cool build, guess I'll solo as Hunter then. They really shouldn't have made it cost a heroism and cost a card play, what the fuck, like seriously. Anyway, at the very least, it does take some fine-tuning to figure out which heroes pair well together, what cards would complement the other strengths and hide their weaknesses, and that's a big part of the fun, absolutely, learning to take advantage of the many intricacies of each hero's gimmicks and abilities, so it is a shame it wasn't a larger percentage of my playtime the first go-around. This is a weird thing to criticize, since I did want more combat, but I also liked the time I spent with the Lifesim portion. Well, mostly anyway. I do think it starts to drag on near the end, especially factoring in that most characters seem to fixate on 1 or 2 talking points the whole way through, and the game overall contains a frankly ridiculous amount of voice lines, most of it good enough that you'd feel bad for skipping through it. The quantity is definitely there with the hero relationships and dialogue, that's for sure, and it's fairly enjoyable all things considered. Sadly, you can't romance any of these characters. I doubt Marvel would have approved of it, of course. But I mean, who gives a fuck about Nico or magic? Come on, Firaxis, just put it in, you cowards. No, friendship is all that's on the table here, and it's fine, I guess. All joking aside, there is a wholesomeness to the interactions in this game that I'm quite fond of. You don't necessarily have a ton of influence over your self-insert Hunter character, it's not even close to the level of interactions as Baldur's Gate or something, but even still, it's nice to talk to and connect with this cast of heroes. All of them have their own insecurities and issues, and magically enough, this 100-year-old undead lady is able to help all of them with their problems and become their best friend. Even though I had to play the wingman and let Blade move in on Captain Marvel instead of myself, hearing her open up about finally finding a real friend who understands what she's going through was kind of touching. Nico with her past trauma relating to her parents, Peter's constant self-doubt and imposter syndrome, Robbie's imposter syndrome, I guess, too. A lot of that going around these days, am I right? And Tony Stark's, lack of relatability? Alright, fuck Tony. No, really, Tony Stark in this game is annoying as all hell. The main way to become his friend is picking the answers that verbally get his rocks off and play to his ego. He's a complete asshole, and I get that's kinda his thing, to be snarky, but it didn't land for me at all here. In the movies, he has a sort of charm, a wittiness that's endearing, even when he's being a dick. Here, just a dick. A big fat dick. One that I wouldn't want to suck. There's a surprising amount of ways to engage with the characters in this game. Sometimes they'll simply want to talk about what's going on with the story, others they'll open up randomly about something on their mind, they could have a request which gives you certain rewards if completed, and they also might ask you a question and your answer determines what items or bonuses you get. In addition to that, there are 3 different clubs to partake in: Emo Kids, Shop Class, and Book Club, and they all get their own shirt for each member. Just look at these adorable guys in their hobby shirts. Amazing. Shop Class is where Tony really makes his presence known, ruining the upstart vibe Robbie and Peter had going with his expensive high-tech auto-build stuff. They had a big falling out, and yeah, Tony tried to apologize, but fuck off, he'll never learn. Why does everyone hate me? Is it because I'm rich and want to ruin everyone's fun? Can't be. Anyway, all 3 of these clubs contain certain members of the overall group, and it's interesting to see how it all lines up, such as Captain America and Logan showing up for Book Club, and fuck, Blade being the founding member of it, dang. These all mostly seem like another avenue for the player to earn some cards and interact with the characters, and I'm all about it. Sure, let's hear about your book, Steve Rogers. What did we all learn from the leadership skills it talked about? Oh, what's that? The book you chose happens to specifically talk about how great Captain America is? Oh, that's not why you picked the book, huh? Okay, yeah, of course. On a more individual note, you can hang out with some heroes after missions one-on-one, where you'll choose an activity out of 3 to bond over. Drinking, stargazing, playing video games, watching a movie, cards, lounging by the pool. You'll always get some snippets of unique dialogue. Well, I guess I can't say for sure, but for as many times as I hung out with people, I seemed to never get any repeats in a self-contained playthrough. Impressive. You'll get a few opportunities to respond, some answers boosting your friendship level, or pushing your balance towards dark or light. Don't worry, I'll get to that later. And afterwards you can give them a gift. Sadly, this is one of the biggest missed opportunities in the game, in my opinion. You can use your gloss currency to buy gifts in the Abbey store thing, or just literally steal it off a shelf, I don't know. Some give more friendship points based on rareness, such as epic, legendary, etc. You know all the gamer words by now. But what's even better, some gifts, much like in Stardew Valley and other games like it, are loved by certain characters and hated by others. You'll either get a loved, liked, or disliked, dislike actually lowering your friendship level, and it's not a crapshoot by any means, most make perfect sense. A 19th century poetry book written in Russian? Naturally, the Russian character Magic loves it, and most dislike it. Deadpool and Logan, being Canadian, both love the root beers of Canada, which, yeah. There seems to be a comic book that matches every one of the characters, usually their first appearance, which is really cool. These are all legendary, and thus give the most friendship points. I really wish Firaxis put those comics in the game, so players could potentially see these for themselves. I think that would have been a fun marketing tool to potentially sway some gamers into buying a comic or two, but whatever, I guess. There's a book about dealing with difficult coworkers, and appropriately fitting for this team that doesn't always get along, everybody likes it. There's plenty of music boxes and food items that certain people like and dislike, and I'm sure we can all guess which hero loves the advanced photography book, but how about this one? The unauthorized biography of Captain Marvel. Nico and Magic love it, likely because they look up to her. Iron Man loves it. No idea why there, but funny enough, Blade loves it too, since he's literally in love with Carol Danvers. I'm not joking, that's why he started the book club in the first place, so he could hang out with her. Yes, they do hook up near the end, don't worry. The only character who dislikes this gift is the titular Captain Marvel herself. It is unauthorized after all. All of this is really fun, but the reason I think there's some missed potential here is there aren't any scenes where they accept the gift from you, nor a genuinely unique response to it. It's a, how did you know I'd like this? Or, this was fun, and other generic stuff. There's so much dialogue found all over the game. A lot of it interesting, and a lot of it not.
Your love life is pretty dull, right?
So it almost feels like there's something missing with these hangouts.
Can't wait till next time.
The same can be said for when you bring in a third wheel to a story mission. In non-story missions, you can form just about any team of 3 you'd like. There's a leader for each one, then you pick 2 more. Hunter doesn't even have to be involved. For story-based ones, though, you'll always have mandatory characters. Sometimes it's just Hunter, and other times it's her and another plot-related person, then you get to pick whoever to fill up the team. I realize there's a lot of characters to choose from, doubly so when considering the DLC characters of Deadpool, Morbius, Venom, and Storm, which are actually slotted into the main game really well, but I'll get to that later. But it just feels so weird that the third person is completely silent during important scenes, almost like they don't belong, even when you think the one you chose makes perfect sense for the situation. In the mission to rescue Wanda, yeah, absolutely Magic should be mandatory. She and Nico have been feeling Wanda's loss the entire first half of the game. But last we saw Wanda, she was Doctor Strange's pupil, so he must have a connection with her too. Yet, when I bring him along, it's as if I brought in Morbius or something. Just stands there silently like an extra. What rubs salt in this wound is how often the game goes out of its way to make characters talk, saying voice lines that benefit almost nothing since they're begging to be skipped, either purposefully or by accident. For instance, when you're on the very brief walk from the Abbey to the mission portal, the designers thought, for some reason, there should be a hefty back and forth between characters, even though you'll never get to hear all of it if you don't specifically stop to listen. Here's a side-by-side comparison of when I chose to listen to all of it versus walking normally.
Looting personality. Something tells me these midnight warehouse raids are pretty normal.
Very.
This area in particular?
Occasionally. Good for a late night snack.
Oh.
The falafel place down the road stays open till 3.
Oh, right, sure. Only maybe next time say it less vampire-y.
One of these days, I'll join you on a mission, and you will see what I am really capable of.
Gamma signatures and unstable isotopes aren't really in my wheelhouse, so we'll be patching Dr. Banner through from Avengers Tower once you reach the other side.
Not bad for a first team-up.
Almost feels like cheating with you two on our side.
Or, even more egregious, the Blade and Wolverine banter when you're chasing the Barghest. All you're asked to do is walk 3 feet towards the portal to start the mission, which would immediately halt all dialogue the moment you step through. Forever, mind you. This exchange can never be resurrected or found in a pause screen. And they just
Wouldn't miss it.
keep talking.
We got time.
Hunter eventually joins in too, And at that point, I was tired of waiting, so I just accepted I'd miss out on this conversation. It's sad, since in my second playthrough I held strong, and realized this was the time they felt it necessary to tell Charlie's origin story, Hunter's hellhound dog friend. It's as if they recorded a shitload of dialogue, didn't know where it would end up going, and tried to smush some of it in during small pauses, in hopes that players might choose to stand around. Speaking of standing around, they also included a non-paltry amount of voice lines for when you're idle, both in combat and while you're hanging out in the Abbey.
Is there something you wanted to tell me?
When you're a new parent like I am, there'll definitely be moments where you have to stop playing the game for a bit.
You can stand there all day. Not gonna psych me out.
So I heard quite a few of these AFK voice lines.
Okay, fine. This is actually starting to psych me out. Can you, magic yourself away or something?
Many of them are funny, but it's wild that this is what the designers thought to put effort into when it comes to the recorded dialogue. Instead of having long back and forths at inopportune moments, or making sure every enemy and hero has a handful of idle phrases at their disposal, I would have preferred they used that effort and voiceover time to make the hangouts even more interesting, reacting to every potential gift in the game in a small unique scene, and given each character a line or two for every possible story mission they could be involved in. The latter has to be something they thought about at some point, as it does exist to an extent when walking to the story portal. I tested it out with a Johnny Blaze mission as multiple teams, and yeah, Iron Man, Captain America, and Ghost Rider all had distinct lines about the situation. Awesome! Now how about when it really matters, though? Perhaps to some people the heroes reacting to specific gifts isn't as important, but for me, it's definitely something I thought about repeatedly during both of my playthroughs. Just imagining the real reaction from Blade when you hand over the Captain Marvel biography. Or even better, the response Carol herself would have given us. Oh, it would have been so great. And yes, I did go out of my way to lower my friendship level with her to prove my point. I'm sorry, but it had to be done. The friendship level is something that'll normally keep going up, but if you're specifically trying to advance your light or dark side alignment, again, I'll get to that soon, you could easily see yourself become disliked by a handful of heroes. This truthfully doesn't affect a whole lot outside of the immediate response to your dialogue choice and the number going down, but it's still fun that it exists at all. The effort to record so many reactions to match what you chose is great, and it's always nice to have some wrong answers thrown in the mix, so to speak. The Midnight Suns group itself favor dark side answers normally, with some odd exceptions, and Avengers favor light side answers, which I have my own problems with that I'll get to later. On my dark side run, I was in New Game Plus, so I already overleveled Captain Marvel's friendship. However, even still, every time I was about to pick the answer I knew she would hate, I felt pretty anxious. There was a twinge of dread felt before, then subsequent guilt felt after each dark side answer I gave, but I'll admit it was usually followed by laughter, as the repeated instances of Hunter letting Carol down one conversation after another is low-key kinda hilarious. She even calls you out for not having friends one time.
Woof. Remind me not to make room for you at my table in the cafeteria.
Table? Cafeteria?
Never mind, Hunter. It's a joke for people who actually have friends.
Fucking bitch, I was your best friend last time. I know I keep talking about Carol here, but really, she's the best example of how different things can feel when you pick answers that don't gel with the characters in question. In my light side playthrough, I never got on her nerves. She would confide and joke around with me, since Hunter was friendly and harmless. Well, dark side Hunter is a different beast entirely. At every opportunity, in every instance of them speaking with each other, Hunter says the exact wrong thing, almost on purpose it feels like after a while, as if she's trying to annoy her.
Oh geez, Hunter. Tell me something I don't know. I get the importance of finding him, okay? Don't need you to Hunter-splain it to me.
Carol's disdain towards Darkseid Hunter is plain as day each time, and it never gets old.
You know what, Hunter? I really don't like being told what I can or cannot do.
While all of this is definitely in the Lifesim portion of the game, Midnight Suns does a good job of conjoining the two, giving reason to engage with the relationship side of things to make your favorite heroes better. Hunter has 2 passive ability slots, one based on the suit unlocks, and one based on the dark side light side alignment, which takes the form of a certain collar. She's the exception, everyone else only has one passive that unlocks after the second individual friendship level, and gets better on the 4th. Their benefits in battle, while small, are significant and can definitely help turn the tides. For instance, Blade having a chance to inflict bleed on every attack, Captain America being given a large amount of block at the start of combat and gaining a small amount every turn, or Doctor Strange getting a 50% chance to generate 1 heroism per turn, eventually 2. When a friendship level up takes place, you'll get invited to another hangout to cement this deepening of your relationship, which features, you guessed it, more unique dialogue. This game keeps on giving, huh? I did see one edge case problem with it though. The scenes are obviously set in stone, but if you had saved your Wolverine friendship time until the end, his level 2 hangout might clash with the current events. Magic, in the previous mission, just murdered Sabretooth. Like, for realsies this time, he's dead. Wolverine and Hunter even discuss it afterwards, yet in their next hangout, Wolverine warns Hunter about Sabretooth.
He's killed everyone I've ever been close to. Girlfriends, co-workers, casual pals. He even killed my mail carrier.
It's also nice that you can keep advancing their friendship level once you max it out. Like a prestige system with benefits, it increases their stats a bit while earning you cosmetic currency, gloss, in the process. A very good feature to include considering New Game Plus exists. When you get them to level 5, you unlock their Midnight Suns challenge mission, and upon completion, earn their legendary card and their Midnight Suns outfit. I'm not sure I love how the final story level of the game just gives every hero their outfit, and since it carries over into New Game Plus, it means there's one fewer thing to unlock with the challenge missions, but whatever. I don't think every legendary card is equally as useful, but it's fun at the very least to equip them for a few missions and see their destructiveness in action. Particularly, Captain Marvel's just doesn't seem worth it. Sure, it has a large area of effect to deal damage, but in the late game, that's simply not enough to contend with the high enemy health pools. Maybe using it on minions is worth it, but in that case, I may as well equip her quick jabs instead, since they at least grant heroism and don't take up a card play. I can tell I'm getting a little too far in the combat weeds here, though, so I'm gonna move on for now. I know I said earlier that the challenge missions are well done, since they act as a puzzle for you to conquer, while also forcing you to utilize that character's gimmick, but truth be told, not all of them are equally good. Hunters, which for some reason you're forced into doing on New Game Plus again if you want to have access to the rest, kinda sucks. You have to be very specific with your knockbacks to toss these goobers into the right place, and finally hit the crystal. I realize Hunter's deck, more than any other, could be filled with a ton of different types of cards that drastically change up her and the team's strategy, so it'd be impossible to nail down her gimmick. Sorry I keep saying her, by the way, but I chose a female for mine, so go with it. But even still, knockback isn't even close to her biggest strength. Deadpool's is also one that stuck out as really bad. I'll talk about the DLC as a whole later on, but since we're here, it needs to be addressed. Not only does this not show off how to utilize Deadpool to his fullest in my opinion, seeing the solution makes it clear that it was always going to be a crapshoot. Assign the damage randomly, it felt like, until you win the day. I'm pretty mixed on Deadpool in this game, at least when it comes to his cards and gimmick, but even still, I don't think this is a good demonstration of him at his best. While everything I've mentioned so far is based on individual hero friendship level, there's also the team friendship level, which hard caps out at 8, and affects things overall in relation to how you interact with the other heroes, such as there being more gifts to buy in the gift shop, the compliment button granting more friendship points each time, and the fucking combo cards. Oh, I'll talk about those later, don't you worry. In addition to the post-mission hangouts, you also get the opportunity to give a gift when inviting heroes to havens. This one is a little more strict. There's a finite amount of discoverable havens out in the Abbey grounds, you can only use a haven once, and each hero can only be invited to a haven once. Better not fuck up and take Eddie Brock meditating, or you won't get any friendship points out of it, whereas taking Doctor Strange meditating gets you the maximum amount. In the haven hangouts, you'll get some more dialogue, also unique as far as I can tell, which is great, even if some heroes like to fixate on a single topic every single time you two hang out, such as Mr. Strange. Fucking get over the sanctum, man, it's gone. The havens are one of many secrets to uncover when exploring the home base area. Essentially, there's the Abbey building itself, with the yard next to it, which houses all of the NPCs and equipment to interact with. Then there's everything else on the map. Woods, graveyards, caves, and etc. You won't have all of it to delve into right away, you'll have to slowly peel back its outer shell, like an onion, or so I'm told by that one movie everyone seems to love. Morbius, right? You'll solve mysteries to earn moon seals, place them in the right spots, then complete combat challenges which unlock new powers to use in the Abbey grounds itself, which usually open up new paths, leading you to new areas to explore, more chests to loot, or simply grant you arcane keys to unlock said chests. There's a lot of backstory journal pages to find, some written by Hunter herself, some by Wanda, and some written by other inhabitants of the Abbey from long ago, such as Caretaker, your mother Lilith, and a horrible evil guy named Shaw, who basically hung and burned witches back in Salem. What a cool dude, very neat. You'll get some insight into how these characters thought 100 years ago, many of them when Hunter wasn't even born yet. It genuinely did make me feel a little more comfortable with Wanda when she finally joined the party, like I understood her mistakes and struggles more than I would have from simply asking her and getting a text dump. Besides the journals, there are 22 tarot cards to find, which unlock a certain skin, and you can collect the many ingredients growing all over to eventually use in a magical cauldron, granting yet another way to unlock and gain items and gain currency. Oh boy, there's a lot of that stuff going around, huh? It's funny, as there really isn't that much to say about the Abbey Grounds exploration, this is barely a full paragraph, yet it easily comprised a third of my total playtime, up till about 3/4 through the game. It only stopped there, since I was basically done with all of it. Either way, it's not that interesting, but like before, I can't complain too much either. I did like figuring out how to gain more ground in these mysterious woods, hunting down secrets, earning more powers. The music is soothing enough on its own, but if you know you'll be running around through the forest for a half hour or so, boot up a video or something and chill out while you explore. That's what I did, and I had a good time. There's a lot about Marvel's Midnight Suns that's hard to wholesale criticize, even if I mostly talked about it in a less than ideal light, because I can't deny it, I didn't hate it, I had fun. The alignment meter is another instance of that. Hunter is the child of Lilith, and thus has pulls towards both the light and the dark sides. There's a handful of ways to earn alignment points, the most obvious being the dialogue choices, since they're explicitly labeled. Besides that, playing enough dark or light Hunter cards in battle will net you some points, along with, lounging by the pool on a new moon or full moon? What the fuck? There's a special Hunter outfit awarded at 125 dark or light points respective of alignment. You'll unlock a specific legendary card halfway there, and at the maximum 200 points each way, you'll get a duplicate so you can upgrade said dark or light legendary card. Certain passives will unlock as well, such as the collars for semi-dark, semi-light, full light, and full dark. Initially, I really didn't like the idea that it was such a binary system with a clear reward at the end of one of the tunnels, the outfit and legendary card, as obviously you'll just stick to whatever alignment the whole way through and be locked out of the other side. The thought of playing the whole game again just to get the other outfit sounded ridiculous. However, I've swung back around on the idea. Not only is it surprisingly worthwhile to roleplay as both Light and Dark Hunter in different playthroughs, as the many dialogue choices and different responses are genuinely entertaining, but also, if you're committed to the role and let it influence your deck build for the Hunter, you get to play the game in 2 entirely different ways. Or maybe even 3 if you wanted to go hard neutral. Essentially, Dark Alignment Hunter cards focus on raw damage potential and offer a solo-centric style of play, and Light Alignment Hunter cards encourage you to play as the support role, allowing the other heroes a chance to shine. There are plenty that don't have a light or dark connotation, and those fall more in the middle, which can help to either fill out a dark or light-focused deck, or be your main course, such as how it is in the very beginning of the game. This, along with the many benefits that come with New Game Plus, and the many increased difficulties to pick from, made my time in a second playthrough completely worth it. Sure, I skipped a lot of the dialogue I've heard before, but being able to see a different side to the game, both with the dark side dialogue choices and with the combat encounters, I'm now completely in favor of the alignment system. I think it ups the replayability factor while also allowing for more strategies to pick from when creating a deck for the Hunter. Now, I will admit, the dark and light side dialogue choices themselves aren't the best. It's true what I said, I did really enjoy role-playing as a full light side or full dark side Hunter to see the many funny replies and reactions, but the problem is, when you aren't accepting this gimmick and are trying to forge your own create-a-character path, it lets you down quite a lot and makes things too one-dimensional. I'll talk about the latter problem first. This one is pretty straightforward. When you know for a fact you want the outfit, legendary card, and passive bonuses on either side of the alignment meter, naturally, anytime you see a light or dark side choice, you'll select it without much thought. There's a lot less room to choose responses that genuinely feel like an extension of what you, the player, think in the moment, since they dangle the result in front of you the whole time. Imagine if they did that for friendship points. You'd likely always choose the +2 or +4 options when they show up without hesitation. Maybe as a neutral Hunter this isn't so bad, as you can then really decide what you'd want to say each time, but then there's still a lack of progress being made, since you're so firmly on the fence, meaning you won't be awarded the shiny new thing, and we all want shiny new things, right? Right? The outfits aren't even that great, to be honest. Like, why put a fucking skull on her right shoulder when that's the one she raises over her face when activating specific dark side cards? So weird. Anyway, that's the first issue. It trivializes your choices when a dark or light side option pops up. The second problem, of the dialogue choices themselves letting you down a lot, is a bit more subjective. When taking a step back and viewing the whole picture, again, it is funny seeing these conversations play out, but when you're trying to connect with these heroes and win them over, when you're attempting to place yourself into this character's shoes, these responses just feel completely random and stupid. The competency and logic of the words uttered by the hunter matching up with the supposed light and dark side alignment vary depending on the dialogue choice, but on the whole, it definitely doesn't feel like dark or light side, instead more of a ignorant and kinda dumb asshole versus pushover doormat, whiny little tattletale bitch with nothing interesting to say. That was a mouthful, but seriously, not only do so many of these light side responses make no sense full stop, which I'll have plenty of examples for you, but for some reason, being one with the light means constantly saying, "Oh, actually, I don't know, man, you probably shouldn't do that, Caretaker might get mad." I have no earthly idea why Caretaker is such a focal point with all of the light side responses, but it's like all the game fucking cares about. Either you'll get a very boring, "Oh, that must have been so hard for you," you'll be the killjoy parent and tell Robbie that his idol Johnny Blaze is a bad influence for some reason, you'll repeatedly let Magic and Nico down when discussing Wanda, losing friendship points almost every time, you'll verbally suck Tony Stark's dick, or you'll threaten to go tell Caretaker whenever the Midnight Suns try to do anything on their own. What the fuck, man? When I was trying to get invested in Lightside Hunter early on, this almost killed the alignment system for me, as it never, ever felt right. The best example is the post-Wanda rescue mission near the midpoint of the game. We just saved Wanda, the person we lost at the start of the game, the one that the Midnight Suns have been trying to get back ever since. It's an emotional reunion, or at the very least, a huge win, considering that this is the first time we've successfully brought someone back from Lilith control, and we now have another hero, one of the most powerful on the planet, right? Right? Tony, what have you got to say about this?
Oh, I wish I could see Banner's face when he realizes we swiped this thing back from him. Do you think I'll get a "Curse you, Stark"?
Wow, what a chode. He's instead focused on his rivalry with Evil Banner and gloating about how cool he is, getting the Gamma Accelerator back. I've paused it here for anyone who hasn't played the game before. Read the room and ignore everything I've said about this game so far. What direction should a light side choice go, and what direction should the dark side choice go? Got your answers? Cool. Well, here's what the game thinks. Light side, stroke his cock and go along with it, or dark side, ask him why he doesn't care about getting Wanda back.
I do not care for theatrics, but I do hope you get your wish.
Oh yeah, can you picture it?
You are crowing about your accelerator and not one word about Wanda?
Wanda. Oh.
How does this make sense? How is it a dark side action to care about the person we just saved? I've done this on 2 playthroughs with both sets of answers, and you lose friendship with Tony by calling him out, even though he knows he was in the wrong. God, what an insufferable prick. Even better, right afterwards, when talking with Nico, the only light side option is bringing up how Caretaker feels for some reason.
You, reunited our twisted little family of outcasts, and, we're never gonna forget it.
Caretaker will not forget it either.
Seriously? Why is Lightside Hunter constantly afraid of getting scolded by her parental figure? This happens all the freaking time. It's maddening to play as a Lightside Hunter when speaking with the Midnight Suns. All she fucking thinks about is Caretaker. I can kind of get the idea that the Avengers group favors Lightside answers and the original Midnight Suns favor Darkside, but in practice, it just looks ridiculous. Later in the game, after Tony's stupid dumbfuck brain-dead plan didn't work, and instead of saving the day, he made Evil Banner into godlike Evil Hulk, making our problems way worse, Tony and Steve have an argument about it, and you're asked to weigh in on Tony's involvement.
Is Rogers right? Should the star player get benched after one mistake? Or maybe you're smart, and you know I can get us across the finish line.
Literally how? How in the world is the light side choice sucking Tony's dick yet again? What does light side even mean to this game? It's so arbitrary and unserious. When your answers relate to compassion and understanding, yeah, sure, I'm on board. But when you're literally placating Iron Man's ego and the game says, good job, that was the moral thing to do, it simply becomes frustrating. I would say maybe this is because they tried to stick too hard to the Avengers and Midnight Suns dynamic, but that can't even be it, as I've seen Nico respond poorly to Darkseid answers, and magic respond positively to light side answers, so what the fuck? Did Tony Stark suck Jesus' dick? The dark side way to go, while humorous when you dissociate from your character and these heroes, is still pretty tough to watch at times, as Hunter seems to go out of her way to be mean. Telling Caretaker to fuck off? Sure, absolutely, but Wolverine has been nothing but nice to us, and if anything is more like Hunter than any other hero, given how long he's been alive, and she constantly puts him down.
I could bring you along, but honestly, I am not sure you have what it takes.
You remember who you're talking to, right? You didn't get hit on the head and lose your memory.
You smelled a Barghest and you thought it might be me? Seems like your hunting skills might need a tune-up, old man.
My skills are as keen as they've ever been. What do you think a Barghest smells like?
I do not know.
Exactly.
I just don't see a reason for a confident anti-hero Hunter to make fun of or call out her like-minded teammates, but like I said, maybe that gives more reason to do a neutral run in the future. This Paragon Renegade alignment system doesn't feel all that great when you're trying to take it seriously, but as it stands now, I still think the positives outweigh the negatives. The deck building and strategic differences, the collars that prop up a certain playstyle, and of course, the joy of picking the wrong choice time and time again, specifically to hear Carol's exhausted and distraught reactions.
You should not be afraid of this power.
Afraid? Seriously? Look, Hunter.
The voice acting and overall sound design is really well done. Many people online seem to dislike Hunter's voice work specifically, citing that it's too stilted and dry, but I actually quite like that aspect of it. I think it mostly hits the mark of a 300-year-old lady interacting with humans of a different time, and outside of maybe one or two specific lines,
I killed the bastard.
Sounds natural for either dark or light side roleplaying. I didn't get to hear too much of the male version of the Hunter, but it's Matt Mercer, you can't go wrong. The other voice acting is solid, but it's hard not to notice the presentation side of things is a bit lacking. I'll lump that in with my list of small issues the game has later, but for now, yeah, the voice work is fine, but the matching visuals don't always look the best. One of the biggest surprises with the sound design for me was the music. Knowing that this was a post-MCU Marvel product, a collaboration of heroes instead of just one to build around, and that it was created by Firaxis, who hasn't put out a soundtrack I particularly liked a whole lot, I wasn't expecting much from Midnight Suns in the music department. Well, just about every song I at least liked, and many of them I flat out loved. Exploring the Abbey, the pre-mission tune, which leads into the post-pre-mission power walk, and the, frankly, impressive number of battle themes. So often I'd enter a combat encounter and get excited at the song selection. In XCOM, there was really only one track that stood out, and that was found in XCOM 2. Here, a ton of these wiggled their way into my brain, so I have to give Firaxis credit on this front. They really stepped up their game. Now, there is one problem I noticed with the sound design. Midnight Suns seems to take after many Hollywood films, as the audio mixing isn't very good for normal speaker systems. I've tried fiddling with the audio settings, but that didn't do much. The cutscenes are always quite a few decibels higher, as are many specific attacks in combat, such as Deadpool's quick shot,
Mucho gusto.
Blade's stake, and the Hydra Mystic, or Sin from the DLC's forceful knockback attack. Instead of getting an earful every few minutes, or adjusting the volume on my speakers every time I predict one on its way, I just opted to turn my computer's overall volume down so I can mitigate the damage. That's sadly not even close to the extent of little annoyances and problems this game has, so before I get into Combat Part 2 Electric Hullabaloo, it's time we finally address some of Midnight Sun's worst and or silliest qualities. First off, the 2K launcher exists and is awful, genuinely plaguing the game with performance issues left and right. It's forced onto you when playing on PC, so best to look up how to circumvent the launcher entirely, which is what I did. There are still some technical glitches now and then, but nothing earth-shattering. Blaze's neck fading in and out for some reason, Wolverine falling through the floor in the Barghest mission, a lot, actually, all the time on both of my playthroughs, a floating disembodied Blade head in one of the cutscenes, sometimes a card will stay in your hand when you've already played it. Actually, this happens a lot, like all the freaking time. A few times it even had red text explaining why I couldn't use it, missing from hand, even though I didn't have card plays anyway, so it didn't even help. Sometimes dialogue will skip ahead on its own for the first 2 sentences of a conversation. As great as the music is on the whole, it'll oftentimes randomly and abruptly stop during combat and turn dead silent for a while. During the scenes where characters talk in the Abbey, sometimes their faces look blurry, as if the camera is out of focus or something. A hero's head or body could behave jarringly during these conversations, or their eyes will be closed for the duration of the camera shot, fixing itself when it cuts back to them. On the gameplay side of things, there's also this weird issue where camera sensitivity and inverted or normal settings affect both the third-person hunter control sections in the Abbey and the top-down camera in fights. For me, this meant one of the gameplay sections would feel worse, so the other would feel better, and I opted in favor of being able to walk around the Abbey normally, meaning I almost always went the wrong way when turning the camera initially in combat. Since we're here, I'll also throw in how odd your controls for the comic editing are. Much like with XCOM 2, after a successful mission, you get to make a poster for your team. This time the theme is a comic book cover, a very fitting addition to this comic book game. Randomizing to see something cool is always fun, but when you're feeling creative enough, you can edit it yourself, but the way to zoom in and out, plus moving the characters around, is so unintuitive, it's insane. Why you wouldn't be able to use WASD to move it through the 2D plane it's on, then zoom in and out with Q and E, or even better the mouse wheel, is beyond me. I'd even take using the left click to drag them around, but that's solely used for rotating them horizontally. No, instead, W brings the character forward on the Z-axis, S pushes them backwards, and A and D go left and right, while Q and E go up and down? What the fuck, man? That said, something Midnight Suns has over XCOM 2 when it comes to the mission posters is that here, you can actually use them for something cool. The Abbey has a lot of boring and weird paintings up by default, but you can convert your comic book covers to a painting and hang them up. I hope Nico isn't uncomfortable seeing her face all over. She'll be fine. The compliment feature is pretty bare bones. You sometimes unlock one when a hero does something, like a hero ops or what have you, and then you can press F to compliment them, and get some amount of friendship points based on your team upgrade level. I just described the entire gameplay mechanic. It's literally press F to pay respects. And here's how they normally play out.
Your flying is incredible.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
So cool. However, you might not even get that, as other people won't shut the fuck up sometimes when you're not even in the same room anymore.
But it would be cool to see Robbie do donuts on the lawn. Mostly to see the look on Caretaker's face.
When you press F to give a compliment when other dialogue is playing like this, you'll get the friendship points without even saying a word. Good lord, see what I mean? This game is filled with dialogue. Holy shit, I'm going insane.
Stark would say, a feature, not a bug.
Speaking of the card upgrade screen... Oh wait, this line was supposed to be placed above the one about compliments. Whatever, I'm talking about the messiness of this game, so I'll make my script messy to match it. Sign up to the Patreon, by the way, and like, comment, and subscribe, you dirty bub, you. This is so stupid. Like I said a while ago, Jesus, how long is this video? You can upgrade a card and add a modifier to it. However, even though it's a nice 1-2 punch, one is consistent and the other isn't. Upgrading is smooth as can be. You can view normal cards and preview what the upgrade would be. This helps determine what card to choose when getting coil booster packs. However, modifiers don't let you do that. Modifying a card, which you can only have one modifier on at a time, remember, costs credits and some essence that matches the card type. The possible modifiers aren't static, they seem to be random as far as I can tell, and they vary wildly in usefulness depending on the card. The part that makes all of this so frustrating is that you can't back out of the selection screen. They make you pay for it up front, then you have to choose one of these options. They clearly wanted this to be a gambling thing, as if you currently have a modifier on, your choices grow from 2 to 3, the third one being the one you already have, in case you don't like the other two, I guess, but the game still keeps your money and essence if you stick with the same modifier. Simply put, this is bad, and I don't like it. This feels like an attempt to stretch out a player's time when fine-tuning their sets of cards and builds, but the game is plenty long enough already. I don't think this RNG implementation was necessary at all. It doesn't even make sense for New Game Plus, as yard upgrades don't carry over, so you'll have to play a dozen missions or so to finally be able to modify cards again. What the fuck? There also doesn't appear to be a way to prevent two similar modifiers from being thrown your way at a time, which makes it a completely dull and boring choice sometimes. Redraw to recover 50% of your offense as health, or redraw to recover 100%. Oh boy, wonder which one I'll pick. That same similar rewards problem extends to some of the hero questions, the one where you'll get prompted to choose between two different answers, the results of which are shown to you up front and are likely the only thing you're looking at when you decide on an answer. Sure, friendship with one hero or another is fine, as is getting compliments or a legendary gift, but when you get to pick either an upgraded ability card or a non-upgraded ability card? Shit, this one's tough. Firaxis is really dishing out Sophie's Choice level of decisions, huh? While they start off pretty decent, the requests simply become stupid after a while. Near the end of my first playthrough, everyone apparently really wanted me to become friends with Eddie Brock, Venom. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, every single day a new person would ask me to take on this request. Every fucking day. I turned them down every time because fuck Eddie Brock, he sucks dick, and they'd vanish to a different spot in the Abbey. It's remarkable how consistent it was, and how the game wouldn't take the fucking hint. And, you know, it teleported them around the room. I'd be pretty psyched to have Nightcrawler in this game, but this isn't quite what I had in mind. The Barghest combat encounter I've already brought up, since it has an inopportune conversation prior to it, and has consistent performance issues such as Wolverine dropping through the floor during it, but there's even more here. First off, the subtitles are wrong. They put once in when it should have been one. Bring it back in once piece? Come on, guys. Incredibly nitpicky, I know, but Jesus Christ, this is an $80 game. Secondly, this is the only time you can't save during a battle, nor can you restart the encounter. This one right here is the exception, and in both playthroughs I did a slightly dumb thing at the start, and was forced to tough it out when I would have otherwise reloaded the save in any other instance. In my New Game Plus attempt, because I was on Ultimate 3 difficulty, I also didn't get any revives. Sweet. Thanks to Wolverine's healing abilities, I was able to solo my way through and win the day, but fuck off with this random exception to the norm. I think that's everything. All the small problems I've been holding in, all vented out in a ramble only a mother could love. Goddamn, man. It's now time for
Combat Part 2, Electric Hullabaloo!
Sick, thanks for the help, guys. Earlier, I gave a brief overview of the deck building and battle mechanics, but there's actually a lot more I wanted to talk about. I just didn't want to bog down that section since it was still pretty early in the video. Now that we're here, let's get to it. One of my favorite clever design choices when speaking on the combat comes down to the way the enemies take their turn. The opposition will have a symbol above their head showing which hero they're targeting, if any at all. This is integral information in deciding what moves to make, such as knowing when to use taunt or counter abilities to their fullest. The order of their attacks, though, is the highlight here. It's very well thought out, curtailing any feelings of unfairness that could arise if the system didn't exist. The game will go through all of the enemies that are targeting one hero, then once they're all finished, the next hero, and then the next. With only a few exceptions, such as some villains like Fallen Scarlet Witch, this means you can trust that if a hero is done being attacked, and are near dead for instance, you're not about to get hit once more randomly later on in the turn. That's already neat and makes sense, but it goes beyond just that. The attack types themselves are also scripted to go in a certain order. All enemies with non-status damage will go first, and then the enemies with nerfs go afterwards, such as stun, dazed, confused, and so on. I'll give 2 examples of how this can benefit you. Say one of your party members has counter, meaning every enemy that deals damage to that hero this turn will receive damage from them in retaliation. If the Hydra Soldier who dishes out the dazed status effect could go first, the dazed status would prevent you from being able to counter the rest of the attacking forces, which would obviously feel pretty cheap. The turn order circumvents this, allowing you to get the most out of this buff. One more example, the status of vulnerable means you take 50% more damage from enemy attacks, but thankfully enemy units aren't allowed to apply the nerf and then attack you on the same turn. The vulnerability status, usually dealt by the camouflage Hydra marksman, always comes last in the turn order, meaning you're given time to rid yourself of the effect before the next time you're attacked. There seems to be rules in place for a whole host of other things too. Bleed only deals damage at the very end of everyone's turn, I assume to make KOing enemies with Bleed more of a decision, since you could either use a card play or heroism point to make sure they can't hit you once more, or save the resources and let them deal one last blow before keeling over. Enemy danger zone attacks are always triggered first so as to get anyone nearby in the crossfire before they get a chance to move, and on, I'm sure. The only negative I wanted to bring up relating to all of this is the lack of clarity on the corruption spread. For explosives and other radial damage, the circle is pretty clear. Well, I mean, sometimes you might have a toe-in on one side and not the other, and the game counts that as you being in the blast radius, which is unfortunate, but still, not terrible. The corruption is said to spread to nearby units, but there's no tell to it. You kinda have to guess if you'll be too close or too far away. That's really the only one quibble, though. For the most part, all of the statuses and turn order stuff is fantastically done.
So, do you have much experience with smithing? Perhaps you should put your suit on for this. So,
Where do you think I got the suit?
much experience with smithing?
I assume through
Perhaps
some
you should
sort of
put your suit on for this.
computer-aided precision manufacturing.
Where do you think I got
process.
the suit,
Do you have
Doc?
much
Well, that's how it is now,
experience
sure.
with
It's the
smithing?
very first one.
Perhaps
I
you should
hammered
put your
out
suit
my
on
own
for this.
precision. Where do you think I got the suit,
Do you
Doc?
have
Well,
much
that's how it is now,
experience
sure.
with
You're a
smithing?
wizard one. I hammered
Perhaps you
out
should put
my
your
own
suit on.
While not all of them are equally powerful or interesting to me, credit also has to be given to Firaxis for attempting to give every non-hunter hero their own gimmick. Iron Man's revolves around redraws. Some of his cards grant you more to use, which store for later if you don't spend them that turn, and many others either get stronger or cost less heroism with each redraw, instead of simply being discarded. This does sadly come with a huge downside, but we're not there yet. My favorite card of his has to be Air Superiority, where he hits every enemy on the battlefield, and you can add 50% more damage per redraw, up to 2 times. Getting a modifier to add the vulnerable status effect makes it even better. It gets rid of all the goobers, while also priming up the next card play perfectly. His Surgical Strike is also decent, allowing you to chain hit as many enemies as you like based on how many Iron Man cards you currently have in your hand. Because of this, and some cards earning you more redraws when played, Iron Man doesn't work as well with heroes that need a lot of maintenance and attention, since so much of his potential comes from his own cards. That said, some of his skills give way to opening the door for others to shine, such as redrawing his Mark Target card to allow a group of enemies to be marked, and one to be marked and vulnerable. In case you haven't ever played Midnight Suns before, marked means that enemy will refund a card play when KO'd, and since vulnerable makes attacks against them 50% stronger, it's a very nice one to use in tight situations with higher HP'd enemies. Plus, he has Heads Up, which gives block to either him or another ally, a defensive card that's never bad to have in your deck. His legendary card is pretty slick. He fires a laser out of his chest. Objects in the play space can block the path, so be careful of that and move him around to get the best angle. Doctor Strange is a great character to bring in with you for almost any playstyle, since he generates a good amount of heroism and has a vast array of skill cards that can help in more indirect ways, such as concealing a teammate, applying resist to everyone, binding an enemy, increasing the damage of every card in your hand, and my personal favorite, drawing the last 2 attack cards played and granting you 4 card plays the next turn. This gives heroism too, so it's really nice when you're staring at a mediocre hand and want to beef up your next turn. His main gimmick is the Enhanced mechanic, which boosts the damage and effects of some of his cards based on how much heroism you currently have. Enhanced 4 or something means that, yes, it will cost more, but it'll also be stronger. Doctor Strange is one of the only heroes I didn't max out their friendship level to unlock their outfit and legendary card, since he's just as fucking self-centered as Tony, but I might have an example of using it in the final battle when the game gives everything to you. Not sure. If so, here it is. If not, shit, sorry. Captain Marvel is supposed to be the early tank of the party. She can taunt enemies and gain block, and while those are the core tenets of a tank, early on, and actually later on too, her deck just doesn't cut it. I like her photon beam, since it looks cool and getting a sick angle on a bunch of enemies always feels great, but so many of her attack cards flat out suck. She's basically a victim of her own gimmick. Going binary doubles her attack numbers while granting her a decent amount of block. The problem is, it's a high maintenance status to begin with, takes an express effort to activate in the first place, and is the only time she shows a semblance of being a genuine tank. For the free Go Binary card to get added to your hand, you need to play 3 Captain Marvel cards first. This means, unless you chained a few quick jabs on minions, you might spend your entire first turn just trying to build her up. Even worse, if you played attack cards on your way to get there, you lost out on the potential double damage you could have dealt if you had binary. Without the benefits of binary, it's almost not worth taunting more than even 1 or 2 enemies, as you don't have that many cards that can get you block. Knee Strike seems like a decent idea, but because it's likely balanced around binary double damage, it doesn't have the best attack numbers, meaning the block you'll accrue doesn't amount to much, and you likely won't kill anything with it besides minions, which means you might as well have used a jab instead since it doesn't cost a card play. Compared to the other captain, sure, she's flashier and more interesting, but she's not as consistent. Carol is either high or low, the star of the show, or a footnote, but Steve is a dependable middle ground. It helps that his draw cards card gives him block off the bat, whereas Carol's doesn't, meaning she has to go chasing other, less direct methods, outside of one exception. That exception is almost redeem-worthy though, as it grants 2 heroism, heals her, and gives block. Not bad. Sure, someone could point to the fact that her draw cards card is better suited for her build, drawing up to 3 or 4 of her cards. Certainly, you'll have a lot of her own cards, and the way she's most helpful is by utilizing her own cards, but you can probably see how much effort goes into making her all she can be. A tank shouldn't need this much attention. She sucks away card plays left and right, all in the name of keeping her ever-fleeting binary status afloat. Her legendary, as I mentioned much earlier, is a bit underwhelming. It seems more tuned for earlier encounters and weaker enemies more than anything, which is strange, as obviously you won't have this at the start of the game. A moderately damaging radial attack. At least it's cheap, I suppose. Unlike Rain of Blows, the most baffling card in her deck. It saps all your heroism and removes all of her block for no reason. How fucking pointless, good lord.
Not sure anyone else but you could pull that off, Captain.
Captain America starts out extremely helpful, and remains as such throughout the entire game. He might not have a cool central gimmick, but that fits his persona like a glove as it is, and the lack of a core mechanic to plan around makes him one of the best choices to bring in with you regardless of your teammates or the mission. His biggest advantages are being able to gain block while drawing more of his cards, his ability to taunt a group of enemies while dealing damage to them, and completely protecting another hero for 1 turn by digging in. Every enemy that was targeting that character turns to Captain America instead, and the upgraded version even grants him a counter. God damn, he's so good. He, like Captain Marvel, also has cards that use up his block, but these ones deal damage based on how much of it you have, unlike Rain of Blows, which just feels completely random in its reduction. His legendary has the consume block effect, and it's fine, but because it removes all block, using it at the end of your turn can really fuck you over. The only card of his I tried to like, but just couldn't, was his Brooklyn Handshake. I like the idea of changing the knockback into forceful knockback if the target was already damaged this turn, almost like it's encouraging tandem hero teamwork, but I never found it to be worth picking over his other cards. Spider-Man's strengths come down to how he takes advantage of the environment, which I've already touched on earlier in the video. Since there's a finite amount of objects to play around with though, he doesn't hold up as well in longer fights. He either helps end a combat encounter early, or turns into a support hero until it's all said and done. He has a bind skill, which pairs well with Hunter, much like Venom and Doctor Strange, but I'll get to that when I get to the Hunter. His chain strike is decent, as you can keep it going up to 4 as long as the previous hit was a KO. Good for clearing out minions or specifically weakened enemies. His legendary card is neat. It makes the next 3 Spider-Man cards free. Not free when it comes to heroism, sadly, free as in it doesn't cost a card play. Since this card does, in fact, cost a card play to activate in the first place, you're essentially only getting 2 free cards out of the deal if you really think about it. Maybe this should have been combined with his other random skill, Web Slinger, that simply gives him Strengthened. Strengthened is free though, and if you don't upgrade it, gets exhausted, meaning you could theoretically take advantage of that fact and have a more efficient quasi-7 card deck to play with. Because he doesn't have a lot of heavy-hitting cards in his deck, I'm not so sure that'd be a great build, but maybe I'm wrong. Wolverine has a lot of attacks, chains, taunts, and healing powers. Every hero has cards that draw more of their cards, and provide a buff of some kind. Captain America's gives him block, Spider-Man's gives him a fast effect, which lowers the heroism cost of his cards by 1. Wolverine's gives his attacks lifesteal for a turn. Kind of clever. It slots in with his well-known healing powers very unobtrusively, since that effect is used for other heroes like Blade, so it doesn't feel out of left field by any means. His other 2 healing cards do, but they're absolutely amazing. One grants health and cures him, but even more, it can be played when he's incapacitated. Cure removes all negative status effects, so being able to play this card while stunned or wounded meaning when you play a card you take damage, is incredibly helpful. His other special healing card is quite possibly the most distinct card in the entire game, however. On every difficulty but the highest, you're given at least 1 revive card that'll get added to your hand when a hero goes down, which costs 2 heroism but doesn't use up a card play. Wolverine has his own specialized revive, one that doesn't need to take up one of his 8 slots, and doesn't count against your limited number of revives on whichever difficulty you've selected. Meaning even on Ultimate 3, you can get a revive, technically, if you have Wolverine. Holy shit, bub. His Stink of Fear ability is goofy as hell. And his legendary card is pretty cool, I suppose. I only got to see it in the final battle, since they give it to you even if you don't have it unlocked. It adds 25 damage for each hit in the chain, and the number of chains in total goes up how much heroism you have, so 10 heroism means you'll be adding an extra 225 damage by the last attack. Since he already has ways to rush all around the play space, slashing and taunting as he goes, this fits in pretty well. Blade's cards are designed around the bleed status effect. His Draw Cards card applies bleed to his next attacks, some cards deal far more damage to an enemy that's bleeding, and his The Hunger free card works with the bleed status effect as well, marking all enemies with it, and the upgraded version Healing Blade for each bloody enemy. I started to finally understand him near the back half of my time playing the game. There's a reason he has so many chain strikes, it's to inflict as much bleed as possible. I actually ended up cycling out my lifesteal stake cards since they didn't fit the gimmick enough. His legendary inflicts bleed to everyone in a circular motion around him. It's fine. Honestly, my favorite part about Blade, by far, are his voice lines. The big bad enemy in the game, Lilith, is known as the Mother to her brainwashed forces, and that being the case, Blade has come up with the perfect insult to injury after he's murdered one of her demons.
Your mother.
He has a few other ones which are also great, such as this.
It sounds to me like they just missed their mama.
And this.
You kissed the mother with that mouth?
But seriously, the thought of an action hero simply saying,
your mother,
after killing a dude is gold. Unbelievably cool. Low-key, I'm actually super excited for the upcoming Blade game. Playing as him in Midnight Suns has me in the mood. Ghost Rider is a chaotic hero, boasting a lot of powerful cards, but many demanding a sacrifice to play them. Either you'll be discarding random cards from your hand, or he'll be taking damage. One card even takes that into account, getting stronger when Ghost Rider gets hurt, either from himself or others. He has ways to recover his health with his lifesteal cards that add a chain each time you use them. It also adds to his soul counter, which increases his max HP by 15% when filled, and can be done twice. Because many of his cards make you discard something at random, he's not a suitable ally for all parties. Storm has a handful of cards that get better the next turn after being drawn, and Hunter specifically owns a high damage card that has its heroism cost decreased by 1 each turn. Seeing those get blipped from your hand when you were trying to save them doesn't feel great. One of his best attacks, and the coolest visually in the game in my opinion, sees your entire hand discarded. He's a hero where, even when you have a full hand of his cards, you're not always sure how it'll play out, given his discard-happy ways. Creating a drop and sending someone in it is always a blast, like I pointed out before, and there's a bit more that's interesting about one of his drop cards, but I'll talk about that soon. His legendary ability is awesome, a visually enhanced version of his other flamethrower attack, using half of your current HP to deal damage. Oh, so cool. God dang, Ghost Rider is sick. Nico is a good inclusion when trying to balance out a team, since she's able to deal damage and provide support. Her randomness and roulette key phrase are her main distinctions. Some cards, when drawn, will randomly assign a damage value or status effect out of a few possibilities. Apply stun, marked, vulnerable, or weak to an enemy, or give hero lifesteal, strengthened, counter, or fast. The RNG kicks in prior to it being in your hand for those, whereas there's a couple of cards where the RNG dice are rolled when you decide to play them. Blood for Blood, if used to KO an enemy, will grant health back to a random ally. Witchstorm will strike 4 times in total, but its hits will be randomly distributed amongst the enemies near the one you selected. The biggest gamble, depending on how many enemies are left and their current health, is Witchfire. It will strike a random enemy on the battlefield, and if it's a KO, will recast and hit someone else. The upgraded version has up to 3 recasts, so this has potential to go really right, or really wrong if you risk using it with an enemy or two at full health still. Her legendary card features the randomized gimmick too, but it's far less of a risk, and more so a domination and display of power. It'll fire off as many attacks as you have heroism points, and on top of that, for every KO, you'll get refunded a heroism point at the end. Plus, it looks fucking sick. Besides that, she has a few utility cards, such as one for healing, and one that reduces the heroism required for other cards. Since she can supply the team with a decent bit of heroism in her own right, she's a decent pick for when you're trying to round out a trio of heroes. Magic, however, is one I really like on lower difficulties and in the early game, but once the enemies get more HP, either at the end of the campaign or on increased difficulties, I'm not a huge fan. In fact, during the final mission, I was super bummed to see that she was one of the random heroes I had to use to close the game out. She creates portals to Limbo with the slice of her sword. A very smart hero to include in the game overall, given the easy contextual explanation of how we're appearing in so many areas of Earth so quickly, and the backstory of how she became the Queen of Limbo thanks to Mephisto tricking her, then him showing up during the story missions and in the DLC missions. Oh, it's great. I'm fairly impressed with how much connects in Midnight Suns like this, and I'll get to that again when we discuss the DLC. Anyway, in combat, the card for creating a portal is free, and if you use any knockback anything, either a card or a shove, the enemy will get thrown through Limbo and end up shooting out of the portal you cast. She does have ways to make her portal attack stronger, but even still, this seems more tuned to taking out lesser enemies, or tossing someone into an explosive or off a ledge, the latter also being far better used on lesser enemies. I like her Gather attack, which groups up anyone in the circle and damages them, and her legendary card is great, taunting everyone in the play space while giving her invulnerability, and a counter when upgraded. It doesn't prevent status effects, sadly, so getting dazed is still on the table, but like I've said before, at least the nerfs get applied last, so she can still counter everyone up until that point. Magic also has a card that allows her to summon someone from the Abbey and draw their cards, meaning you could have 4 heroes in play at once. This card really sucks. Even in its upgraded form, 2 turns with an extra hero while being given 2 of their cards, and the reinforcement card itself costs 4 heroism? I think I got it to come in handy once or twice, but really, this just seems silly. It's not like you get more card plays or anything. If there aren't any buffs applied before using it, at best you'll have 2 card plays left that turn. Hopefully you'll have enough heroism to use the 2 cards that came with this new hero, but even still, more people in battle isn't going to do anything. Sure, if you, say, summoned Captain America and were able to use his taunt cards that turn, that'd be great, but unless there's some behind-the-scenes work I'm not aware of, this is random, and more often you'll get anything else, which clearly won't be very helpful. I'm torn, since this is a cool idea, but executed so poorly it's almost a wasted slot in Magic's deck. Hunter has a summon card too, but hers actually did have use during specific battles, which I'll talk about later. Lastly, there's one more card I wanted to mention with Magic, since it's fucking genius. This goes for Ghost Rider 2. Creating a drop where an enemy or ally was standing for a turn is so fucking clever, it gets me excited just talking about it. Initially I thought, why would I ever want to do this, since I was thinking I'd be out the enemy I'd want to throw into the pit, or out a teammate. No, now I realize that it's a defensive card. In this game, when a hero goes missing, either being replaced with a drop, KO'd in the middle of a turn, or concealed, the enemies that were targeting them don't redirect their attacks elsewhere, they just don't go. For instance, hey, this hero is being targeted by everyone, I'll replace them as a drop as my last card play, and voila, they're completely safe. Outstanding. This works for beefier enemies too. Oh, Sabretooth might frenzy soon? Replace him with a drop. Oh, Fallen Venom or Fallen Scarlet Witch go twice in a row on their turn? Replace them with a drop. Amazing. There are so many fun ways to take advantage of the mechanics at play, providing a good deal of hidden depth to the combat. These tricks feel like a discoverable in and of themselves, and once you put them to good use, makes you feel smart in the process, like you've gotten one over on the game. I've already thoroughly discussed the knockback stuff, such as skirting around shielded enemies trying to protect something, but stun and bind are another easy way to completely shut that protection down. Normally taking out their shield first requires a lot of card plays, or at the very least, a powerful attack. It never feels great to have to waste those cards on these guys' defenses, and prior to learning this tactic, I actually didn't think a whole lot of the stun bind cards Spider-Man, Storm, Venom, and Doctor Strange had, outside of one edge case, so initially I thought they weren't balanced well given their heroism cost. No, now I get it. As cool as that is, there's something even better. There's plenty of missions with the objective of taking down a Nest Mother. She's a very unique enemy, she'll summon altars all over, and if you don't destroy them, she turns them into monuments which grant random buffs to the enemy forces, or nerfs to the heroes each turn. Destroying them does deal damage to her, a nice consideration as she'll always start the battle with a guardian enemy protecting her. Every turn he'll go back and bring his shield up, firmly keeping her safe from harm. You can't target her at all until he's disposed of. Stun works, absolutely, but really, the Hunter's Darkside cards are unmatched in this scenario. Mindbender will cause the chosen enemy to attack their nearest ally twice, and Mindbreaker causes them to berserk, meaning they'll go for any unit nearest them in their turn. The latter is decent, but because it doesn't go into effect until your turn is done, it isn't perfect. Mindbender, though, is the greatest thing in the game. It has exhaust, meaning once you play it, it's removed from your deck that encounter, and that's probably for the best, as good lord it just dominates. Again, killing the Nest Mother is the goal. That's it. When she's dead, you peace out and return to base. Getting lucky and having that card be in your first hand, along with some quick attacks perhaps, you remove her shield while her former protection beats her down, then you clean up the mess with a powerful hit or two, and that's that? Insanity. Literally the most gratifying set of moves in the game. Another way you can pit enemies against each other relates to the bleed status effect. The Revenants have quite a few gimmicks associated with them. They have the Link Soul ability, meaning anyone binded to them via green lines won't die if any one of them has health remaining. They share their HP, so it isn't like your damage is getting wasted, but it's getting spread out amongst a large mass of health, and once everyone hits 0, they all vanish. Neat trick, but their other gimmick is where it gets really interesting. They have what's called Blood Hunger, where they target the last character to gain the bleed status. Yes, not just heroes, anybody, even their own allies, and even each other. Using Blade to make a specific enemy bleed, causing them to direct their offense on them, or, since they have lifesteal attacks, putting that to waste by making them trade blows with their twin? Amazing. The Hydra Sniper usually conceals himself after he attacks, but there's also a 50-50 chance of him going into hiding whenever you strike him with one of your moves. Even though you, as a player, know where he is, his invisibility means you can't use any of your cards against him, since you can't technically target him. However, environmental attacks don't require a target, so exploding something nearby or sliding a dumpster his direction is a decent way to deal damage and make him come out of hiding. You can also knock back an enemy towards him, which is just as effective. This just shows how something so small can go a long way when you add everything up. In a vacuum, this is one enemy, one mechanic, one gimmick to watch out for, which you can counter using the knockback or environmental attacks, but toss this guy in along with everything else in the game, it's yet another wrinkle, another factor to keep in mind when you're taking your turn. The Dark Legion enemy is also interesting. They split into two when hit by an attack, and they can split on their own as a specific action on their turn. They very much resemble the Codex enemy from XCOM 2. It's nice that Firaxis were able to repurpose them to fit within the framework of a Marvel game, but I especially love how well they work with the mechanics of Midnight Suns. First of all, you can stun or bind them and they won't split, so that's already great. Second, their health gets cut in half each split, meaning the more of them there are with low health, the better some of your cards function. Deadpool especially gains from this, but anything with quick works well too. Third, because having more enemies at low health might be a positive, and given that you're able to see who they're targeting beforehand, you can make choices based around that. Oh, they aren't targeting anyone? Sure, leave that one be. They can create weaker babies if they really want, but those about to hit someone? Stun this motherfucker! The stun mixed with the Merciless Dark Hunter card is truly fantastic. Even though I was still feeling things out in my normal difficulty first playthrough, I still had the wherewithal to sync up Spider-Man's Thwip card with Hunter's Merciless whenever they were in the same party, since its power is self-evident. I was going for a light side build, so it was a little silly, given that playing the dark side card pushed me away from my light side goal, but the damage potential was just too massive to ignore. Basically, its damage when used on a normal enemy isn't anything amazing, it's not terrible, but not really one you seek out, but when used on a stunned enemy, the damage number quintuples in size. This always felt satisfying. Even when I was powerhousing in my dark side build and wrecking everything with Wild Strike and Last Sight, I still found myself keeping in Merciless, as seeing that gigantic block of health get removed was always fun. It made me wish for more of these types of cards, the ones that are especially powerful if the enemy has a certain status effect. There are some that are stronger if an enemy has block, or if they haven't taken damage yet this turn, and so on, but that's different. With one, you're using a card at the right time or situation, and with the other, you're creating that situation. The level of agency for being the cause as to why a card is better is far higher than taking advantage of the current circumstances. I could definitely see if it was too frequent of a gimmick, the novelty of it would wear off, but even 2 or 3 more cards that had something similar would have gone a long way. Well, there is the Bleed one from Blade, isn't there? Either way, the Dark Aligned cards and build are truly something special. I'd recommend doing this on a second playthrough though, as you flat out won't get to see the other hero's strengths and weaknesses as much, since Hunter can practically solo everything. I've seen some builds shared by people online that utilize other collars, but personally I never deviated from this setup right here. The combination of 1, Hunter never receiving any negative status effects, and 2, being able to double your next attack card's damage after playing 2 dark cards, which you can repeat over and over, was too good to pass up. Oh, using Wild Strike is going to give me vulnerability? Nope. What's that? Merciless can be twice as strong, and using the double damaged card already counts for one of the 2 dark cards played if you're in a dark build? Why go with anything else? What a powerhouse of a setup. Hunter gets a few legendary cards, and they mostly match a certain alignment. Bladestorm is neutral, Summon Charlie is light side, and Annihilation is dark. Bladestorm is basically always good, a decent pick for almost any mission. Annihilation is fine for a dark side build, but I'm hesitant towards having too many cards that contain an X on the heroism number, since that'll always use up your total heroism and only be as good as how much heroism you currently have. Having that plus Captain Marvel's stupid Rain of Blows in the same hand, and maybe even Nico's legendary, kinda sucks. Summon Charlie is the last card for the Hunter I wanted to talk about, and it'll also close out this quasi-section on fun hidden strengths and strategies. Magic Summon card sucks, for many reasons, but Summon Charlie does come in handy in some missions. First off, you know who you're working with. It's Charlie every time, opposed to a random hero, plus her deck is filled with utility cards that help the team, or damage-dealing cards that help significantly for specific objectives. Her Howl move marks every enemy in a radial zone, which is nice, but even more importantly, she has Bite, which draws a card when you KO someone with it. Remember a long time ago when I talked about the objectives that let you have infinite card plays? Yeah, in those, you had to KO certain enemies to get more cards, as the easy-to-kill minions didn't have that effect. Well, with Charlie, you can KO minions with Bite, it doesn't cost a card play due to the rules of the encounter, and the card itself gives you another free card. Outstanding. For all of those positives, there's one specific problem with the combat side of things that irks me to no end. The combo cards, where 2 heroes team up and wail away on an enemy, are kinda neat in theory, but aren't as interesting as they could be in execution, and simply get frustrating near the end. First off, I mean, it's not really 2 heroes working together in tandem, it's 2 heroes doing their regular attack animations in succession with a plain colored backdrop to make it look spicy. Again, I know asking for more unique things, be it dialogue, cutscenes, or animations, isn't the most insightful criticism, but this is a team-up collaboration game. Marvel Ultimate Alliance had distinct hero combo attacks that injected a great deal of spectacle to the mix, and just felt super cool. One of the most iconic tag team Avenger moves is the Iron Man Captain America laser into shield deflection, And you'd think they'd at least do something for the well-known teammates, such as these two, but no, same thing, they just do their attacks like normal, one by one, with no effort in making them look like they're working together. My second gripe with the combo cards is a far fairer criticism. Early on, sure, they can deal a lot of damage, but once you get your decks how you want them, with upgraded and modded cards, they simply become a hindrance, and it gets worse as time goes on. There, for some reason, isn't a way to remove them from your decks. The quantity is based on your friendship level with the current party, and it tells you how many are available, but you can't interact with it. You're stuck with this fodder. They cost 4 heroism, and by the end game, or New Game Plus, they aren't really that great of attacks. Sure, you can redraw them away, but that's a waste of a redraw as far as I'm concerned, especially when you have multiple in your hand at a time. It's even worse with Iron Man's combo cards, as redraw just reduces the heroism cost. When you instinctively press R on a combo card and literally waste a redraw without getting a new card? Oh man, absolutely fuck off. With a well thought out build, you don't ever count on those cards, they get in the way, and they require 2 heroes to be free, so if one of them is down or has a status effect or something, guess what? You can't use them at all. It'd feel different if they were an extra card, meaning the game would ignore it when drawing up to 6 cards every turn, but it's not ignored. The game expects you to love them, I guess. Add in the fact that you can't use combo cards on non-enemies like helicopters or Hydra devices, and wow, I really wish there was a way to remove them from the game. Oh boy, I can't do a whole lot here. Let's hope my draw 2 cards item can get this hand rolling. Oh, look at that, another goddamn combo card I can't use, and I'm out of redraws. Sweet, the game literally fucked me. By now, I've likely shown at least one of them in the video, but just to be sure, I'll say right now, there are 2 more base game characters I haven't talked about yet, and if you want that information unspoiled for your own playthrough, I'd say duck out now. Scarlet Witch is a character you unlock about halfway into the game. You don't get to spend nearly as much time with her as the others, and that could be one of the reasons why I ended up not liking her much. I mean, if I used her as often as Captain America, for instance, maybe I could have come around. As it is now, she's mostly underwhelming. I realize it isn't easy to both give a character a unique gimmick, while also letting them be as ridiculously strong as the canon calls for. For instance, when playing Legendary, Hulk's cards aren't nearly as strong as some expansion characters, but even still, it's a bit of a shame, especially for Midnight Suns, since all of the characters were released at the same time in one game. Scarlet Witch is one of the most powerful characters in Marvel, yet she doesn't have a lot in the way of decent damage output. Instead, her gimmick revolves around radial effects that can impact multiple characters at a time. Oh, deal a mostly mediocre amount of damage to maybe 2 enemies? Cool, that might kill some minions, I guess. At least this gives heroism, instead of Captain Marvel's Legendary costing it. Yes, I'll throw shade any chance I can get, not sorry. Because the game likes to default to the shove option when near enemies, however, it's a hassle to even position her in spaces to be effective. My favorite card of hers thankfully doesn't suffer from this. Chaos Reigns causes every enemy in the circle to attack an ally, with a 50% chance of attacking twice when upgraded. Always a great time. Quick Toss is also decent, especially when upgraded, but I don't know, there's not much here that I found especially fun to use or helpful for certain missions. Yay, she can mark enemies in a circle. Neat, she's officially as effective as the dog. Perhaps the issue is my own expectations. She's a solid support character, and maybe I just need to view her as such. Even still, though, I'm not a huge fan of cards that simply do something with an object in the environment. I'll expand on this when speaking on the DLC cards. Aside from that, the Exploding Enemy card flat out doesn't seem suited for higher difficulties given everyone's inflated health pools, since you won't be able to take advantage of the KO effect unless you get a minion or a very weakened enemy. I guess it's hard to blame her specifically for that though, so many less than optimal cards and builds fall to the wayside on Ultimate 2 and above. Much like with Doctor Strange, I didn't hang out with her enough to earn her Legendary card, but just by looking at it, it looks very powerful. Is it worth killing her over? I don't know, maybe. Finally, there's one more hero that unlocks at the end of the game. I had my suspicions that Hulk was playable, given his DLC outfits show up for sale, sadly, and the achievement didn't unlock for sparring with every hero after Scarlet Witch, but it is rather surprising just how late you get him. Ignoring all the external cues I unfortunately received, it is pretty cool that Bruce goes from being slightly involved with the Avengers, to being corrupted by Lilith and aiding the enemy, to turning into Hulk and becoming a villain to fight, all the way to you rescuing him and being able to use him in missions for the last 5% of the game or so. His research feels a bit tacked on, and because there's not much time to talk with him, He doesn't even get a friendship meter, there are no hangouts with Bruce, and his challenge mission just unlocks right away. I think the pacing of it all, with the game still showing you new stuff until the very end, and the potential surprise of not knowing he's playable, are both worth the cons of him arriving so late. Hulk surprisingly feels as powerful as he should. He has a rage mechanic where he gets stronger when damaged, and because he has an always angry card that heals himself based on said rage level, like, damn, he definitely feels like a proper tank, and his strength is phenomenal. I mean, in body mass alone.
That's what I was trying to avoid, a conversation about body mass.
Rampage might legitimately be one of my favorite cards in the game. It can chain up to 3 times, and the impact makes it feel so great to use. His legendary is fun, but a bit more on the spectacle side of things would have been nice. Since I made a big fuss about it earlier, I should specifically mention that he also has cards that get stronger when the enemy is stunned, and they work internally with his own deck. He has Smash, which is a stun, as is Thunderclap, which stuns every enemy in a line. It's extremely expensive though, but I suppose you have to balance it somehow. Even though it is very similar to Hunter's Merciless, I don't think this is as good, since it's not conjoining 2 heroes' strengths, it's utilizing Hulk's own deck. Even still, it's cool to play around with at the end of the game. Since I have the best example when using him, I'll share another small annoyance I had with the game. Regardless of where you're pointing the camera beforehand, once you click on a character's cards, it'll rotate and make you face where they're facing. It's needlessly clunky to aim certain attacks at faraway enemies when you happen to be facing the wrong way. I really don't understand why the fuck the game gives a shit where they're facing, enough to completely disorient you when clicking on a hero's card. Finally, there's the 4 DLC characters, Deadpool, Venom, Morbius, and Storm. They each come with 3 story missions, the first of which needs to be completed to recruit them. Some of the missions only become available after a set point in the Midnight Sun story, or require you to already have the previous DLC peeps first. All of their stories relate to Sin, Dracula, and the new breed vampires. Each third mission has a boss encounter of some kind, and once you finish all 12 levels, a Culmination Collab 13th mission gets unlocked, where all 4 characters, plus Blade, go out and finally take down Dracula for good. On the whole, I quite enjoyed the DLC levels, and especially loved the new breed vampire enemies. The way they get added to a battle is pretty unique. They can rush in as reinforcements at times, but more often they spawn out of their egg sacs every few card plays. It'll show the number above each Hemolisk, so you'll have to keep track of when more will spit out as you play your hand. It isn't an infinite spawner, thankfully. It does take damage each time vampires come out. The vampires themselves have quite a few gimmicks. Minions have a 25% chance to grow into an elite version with health whenever a hero gains the bleed status effect, and the elites have the same 25% chance to do something when a hero gains bleed, but for them, they gain the frenzy buff. Frenzy means an enemy will go every 2 card plays instead of on their turn. It's brutal. Along with that, both vampire types, when they attack you, apply bleed on some of your cards, causing you to gain bleed when you play them. While bleed is obviously a trick in their bags, they're weak to it too. Anytime you inflict bleed on them, they gain the marked status effect, making them easier to take down since they'll refund card plays. As you can tell, bleed is a very large part of this content, and having Blade tag along through it all, teaming up while hating Deadpool, and rekindling his relationship with Morbius is great. Before getting to the hero's cards, I first want to point out how well these DLC characters integrate with the normal content. Since they're gated based on story progression, it likely wasn't too difficult, but still, the fact that they talk about current events and genuinely give input and insight on everything while at the Abbey is really nice. The only time where it got funky was in New Game Plus. Since I had Venom when normally he wouldn't unlock yet, at Magic's birthday party, he is there, but he doesn't have any unique lines for the situation. Storm, Morbius, and Deadpool do. In fact, Deadpool has 2.
Now it's a party! Dibs on the floor cake. Really hope Moon Knight wasn't in that cake.
But when you talk with Eddie Brock, it's as if you're asking him his onboarding questions again. Beyond that though, everywhere else, such as when getting Wanda back, he does chime in, offering his input, and that's great. Speaking of Eddie, surprisingly, the game allows you to bring him in with you when you fight Venom in the story missions. Here's my little blue variation of Venom, and he's whipping his past self's ass, as you can see. Along with their many voice lines about current events, there's added lines for the base game characters, talking about them, their backstories, and DLC adventures. It goes a long way in making them feel included and intermixed, instead of isolated and extra. You can gain friendship with all of them, and they each have their own challenge mission, Midnight Sun's outfit, legendary card, and passive bonuses to unlock. As far as how I liked the characters themselves, Eddie Brock is genuinely really annoying, and it seems that he's the only one who gets a side quest. He tries to return to being a journalist and attempts to uncover conspiracies and such when Peter joins in and tries to wrangle him in. Not a whole lot there, but it's more than the others got. It's awesome that a base game and DLC character have this level of interaction, but I just don't like Eddie all that much. Deadpool and Morbius are my favorite characters by far from the DLC. Yes, Morbius, and they even reference the Morbin line meme at the end of the game.
What is your catchphrase? It is time to morb?
Close enough. Let's do this.
Seriously, Morbius is cool, and his dynamic with Blade is kind of adorable.
Do you consider Blade one of your greatest rivals? Because I do not think Blade feels the same.
Oh, really? I thought we had a pretty good rivalry. We bring out the best in each other every time we fight. He must see that.
Maybe he talks about you with Peter.
No, there is no need to comfort me, Hunter. I know how to deal with disappointment. I will go into a dark room and sulk.
How can anyone not love all of these on-the-nose dorky lines, such as this?
I'll just be here, brooding.
And this.
They already implemented many of my ideas once they worked through the design on their own.
I do not understand. What is the problem?
I wanted the credit.
Don't get blinded by the Jared Leto-ness of it all. Morbius is perfectly fine. Deadpool is voiced by Nolan North once again, and I gotta say, though I do like that we got the Ryan Reynolds Deadpool movies, trust me, by the way, if you were alive back when X-Men Origins Wolverine was first released, we were begging for a genuine Ryan Reynolds Wade Wilson movie. It is refreshing to hear this normal Deadpool again. I've seen some people say he isn't very funny in this DLC, but I had a fantastic time. There were plenty of scenes where I burst out laughing.
See? I had your back.
Right. Where is Sin and the statue?
Oh! No time to dilly-dally.
Of course.
Well, guess what, everybody?
Come back with us to the Abbey.
No.
The magical wards will protect you.
No. Hell no.
You can hide there. Help us track down Sin.
No!
Fight off the vampire infestation.
If you insist. Look, Ma, I'm gonna be DLC.
When he mentioned that he deserves a spin-off, it did make me a bit sad, though, since I now know that Firaxis and 2K aren't doing anything with this game ever again.
I'm adaptable. Spin me off, it's a big franchise.
Even though I like the added characters on the whole, I never really found any of their decks or specialties all that interesting. Deadpool's gimmick is his Enfuego counter. This seems to be one of the more divisive gimmicks in the game, from what I can gather by looking up opinions on him. Basically, many of his cards will improve based on how much Enfuego you have, gaining more damage, giving more cards or heroism, blast radius increases, and so on, and the only way to get more Enfuego is to kill enemies with Deadpool. Filling the first Enfuego requires 1 kill, then the second requires 2, and so on and so forth until the max of 5, which requires 5 kills. Add all that together, that's 15 kills with Deadpool to make him as strong as possible, and that's such a fucking pain to acquire in almost any combat encounter. Using his All Together Now card, where the next X amount of teammate kills also counts towards the meter, is helpful, sure, but here's the kicker. If Deadpool takes damage at all, he drops down to the previous Enfuego level. This means you'll have to both mainly get kills with Deadpool, and protect him by taunting with other heroes to keep him untouched. He is the highest maintenance character in the game by far. Getting him to actually be effective on non-minion enemies requires so much effort, and likely a team of Captain America and Wolverine next to him. I did manage to get him to 5 Enfuego thanks to the Dark Legion enemies and them splitting into a dozen or so low HP copies, but beyond that, the vampire enemies work well with him, fitting since they're in his DLC, the Nest Mother altars since they're one-hit kills, and, yeah, that's about it. He's rough. On higher difficulties especially, it's like, how on earth is he supposed to work at all? His attacks deal so little damage, it's impossible to rack up kills on non-minion enemies. Using All Together Now costs a card play, so it's flat out inefficient, and Pain Pinata is genuinely dog shit besides using it to take out a bunch of minions. I find it especially odd that his Chain Pistol card, when upgraded, goes down from a chain of 2 to a chain of 1, but with a +1 for each Enfuego. This is just mean. This is one of the only cards early on that helps him get Enfuego in the first place, and using it when it has one hit is a huge fucking waste of a card play. Oh god, like, he's great. I love Deadpool, but he also sucks and I hate him. At the very least, his Midnight Suns outfit is great, and his legendary is appropriately goofy. Venom basically works opposite of Deadpool, but more on a micro scale. His gimmick phrase is Ravenous. He starts each turn with it, and using damage-dealing cards makes him lose offense for the next attack. Basically, he gets weaker the more you use him. Because many of his best cards require heroism, it feels like he's more trouble than he's worth. Either you play cards specifically to keep his damage high, or you use him once per turn before suffering from diminished returns. That's only if you can afford to play more than one of his heroic cards, of course, which isn't all that likely. I certainly wouldn't say he's as high maintenance as Deadpool or even Captain Marvel, but he's not exactly a hero that'll slot into any team without hassle. Venom is very interesting though, in the sense that you genuinely do get to play around with the boss you previously fought. Wanda was similar, but Venom gives off a stronger feeling of taking control of a former villain. Spike Burst, Symbiote Bind, Lethal Embrace, we've been on the receiving end of those attacks, and now we get to dish them out. Spike Burst specifically is fantastic, probably my favorite card of his. Wow, look at that. Hey Captain Marvel, check it out, a radial attack that rules.
Oh geez, Hunter. Tell me something I don't know.
Lethal Embrace should also get a nod, as it's, surprisingly, an attack card, giving heroism to you, even though it's extremely strong. I like Venom a lot, but I just never figured out where to use him best, and who to pair him with. Two supporting heroes? Or maybe bring him in as a bench warmer unless you happen to get his legendary card? I don't know, maybe. You'd think he'd work well with Spider-Man, but I can't think of any of their cards that synergize. They both have bind moves, but nothing about their versions of them works specifically well with the other. Seems like a missed opportunity. His legendary even speaks to this idea of him mostly being a lone wolf, since it basically supports himself. His attacks and heroics gain quick, and he can draw more cards if he KOs with them, and he gains Ravenous when it's upgraded. Pretty fun to use, but it runs into the issue of his cards being expensive as shit, as the limiting factor will undoubtedly be your heroism number. Maybe the idea is that Venom isn't supposed to gel well with anyone else, since it's, you know, Venom. If that is the case, I get it in theory, but in practice, it's a bit of a letdown. Morbius is a weird one. He sort of functions like a mixture between Captain Marvel and Blade. He deals out the bleed status effect, and some of his cards are better when the enemy is bleeding, but his gimmick of Bloodlust is essentially Captain Marvel's binary. Play his own cards to increase his hunger meter, then you'll get a free no-cost card that grants him block, and the Bloodlust effect is gone if your block is depleted. It's thankfully not terribly difficult to gain Bloodlust again if you've lost it, but this is essentially the only non-modded way to spread the bleed status. None of his cards can spread bleed naturally, even when upgraded, but every damage-dealing card spreads it when Bloodlust is activated. He has a high potential, but much like the comparison I made between the two captains, he isn't as dependable as Blade. His legendary, though, is ridiculous. Any enemy with even a single stack of bleed, and Morbius will basically one-shot it. If you aren't on a higher difficulty, that is. Yeah, a lot of heroes become far less effective when you're on Ultimate 1 or higher, sadly. When looking through his cards individually, some stand out, and not in the good way. He has a card that can conceal himself, which is something Doctor Strange can do. He has a card that forces enemies to attack each other, which is something Dark Hunter can do, but his is far worse. And a few of his other cards feel reminiscent to Iron Man or Wolverine. In a way, he's a mismatch of a bunch of heroes we've already seen, except instead of like Cell from Dragon Ball Z and getting stronger, he just becomes less focused and interesting. Let's take a look at the Conceal card specifically. He gains Concealed, and the next Morbius attack deals more damage. On the surface, that makes sense. A vampire striking from the shadows is a greater threat, absolutely, but if you're observant, you'll notice how superficial this all is. Why is it only this card that gives him more damage, and not him simply being concealed makes him stronger? If one of his unique traits granted him bonus damage whenever he was concealed, then he'd mesh really well with Doctor Strange, which would be pretty clever, as he's one of the only characters that talks about Morbius and advocates for him. Instead, nope, just a one-off card. Since Morbius doesn't have any mandatory team-ups with Strange, I understand why he harmonizes with Blade more, but I feel both could have been accomplished easily enough with that one slight change. You also don't get the benefit of being invisible if you take advantage of the increased damage. You'll become visible and targetable by enemies if you attack, but if you stay hidden and safe for the turn, your concealed is done, and enemies can target you once more. Maybe I'm focusing too much on this card, but it kind of represents my thoughts on Morbius' deck as a whole. Could have been interesting, but not quite there. His charm card is my other bugbear. It certainly looks like Hunter's Mindbender on the surface, but is, sadly, utterly pathetic in comparison. It only affects minions in its base form, but even when upgraded, the enemy of choice attacks a random ally. I got this to work in my favor once, a Revenant attacking its twin, but unless the random enemy happens to be a minion, this card is ultimately less effective than his own Quick Strike. The only saving grace is it granting 2 heroism. It does cost a card play though, so Since this doesn't even engage with his Bloodlust gimmick, I'm simply left confused. His Draw Cards card is also an oddity. You don't just draw cards, you fucking idiot. No, you use his chain attack and draw cards based on how many enemies you've struck with it. Well, when it's upgraded anyway. If not, he just doesn't have a Draw Cards card. Morbius is such a strange lad.
I will go into a dark room and sulk.
Storm, however, is a mix of dumb and kinda cool. Her main distinction is her next turn gimmick, where some cards get better if you keep them in your hand for a turn. There's one card that grants that bonus automatically to every card in your hand that has it, which is fine, but what was so strange was seeing that effect simply get removed when upgrading it. Like, that's her gimmick, and one of the upgrades just removes the gimmick? Why? On that note, she has, quite literally, the most situational and least effective card in the entire game. Sure, Scarlet Witch has the one where she can blow up explosives, but those are at least a little more frequent on most maps. Storm has that same power, but for fucking conduits. Oh wow, neat, a conduit has a slightly bigger radius. Un-fucking real. There's an achievement for stunning 4 enemies in a single turn, and I kept this card in so I could find the opportunity for it to work, and yippee, holy cow, so cool, woohoo. I had to retry this level because this just isn't a good card or strategy. Her Call the Lightning card rocks though, I'll give her that. Plus her legendary is basically perfect for her build, upping the damage significantly per storm card you have in your hand. And it looks fucking brutal, Jesus Christ, this guy is getting toasted. Something that's really neat is how even the shove and environmental attacks are modeled around the character. For magic, she painstakingly uses her portals to throw around some companion cubes, and Storm uses her weather powers like tornadoes. If only they had unique gift dialogue. Okay, that's it. It's now time to talk about the story. It's entirely serviceable. I'm not going to go through everything by any means, but it's entirely functional in the Marvel comic booky way. Evil villain is resurrected, the world is ending, everybody teams up, yay, we did it. Also, the main character dies. Lilith is a great mega villain for the game though, since she has a built-in excuse to work with Hydra, given that they dabble with occult magic and dark arts, and she's able to corrupt villains and heroes alike, bringing them to her side, creating an easy explanation as to why you're fighting these interesting characters. Because it's a prophecy-related apocalypse, one that even the Avengers are scared of, it also gives reason for them to seek out the Midnight Suns and Hunter, the child of Lilith, who killed her once before. Now, that said, the story mission outcomes and constant plan failings do feel a bit underwhelming. The only real wins we get in the first 3/4 of the game, if not more, are getting Wanda back with the Gamma Accelerator, and... that's about it. Even though we finish the missions, sometimes with flying colors, just about everything we try to do backfires or goes up in flames. It's a clash that isn't so bad early on, but when every single level has the same pattern, succeed through gameplay, then fail through cutscene, it makes it all feel pointless after a while. It's hard to stay invested in the story when this recurring letdown kills your momentum over and over and over. For every 1 step forward, we take 4 steps back, and eventually fall ass backwards into the final boss battle, where the big bad of the game, Lilith, face turns out of nowhere and goes after the god that's actually the big bad guy of the game, Cthon. In a way, this feels dumb, but at the same time, I can sort of understand it. We get dreams throughout the game where Lilith speaks to Hunter, and she doesn't say a whole lot besides, "Join me, I'm trying to stop the war, why won't you understand," and such. Which does make sense if her eventual goal was to goad Hunter into retrieving the Blade of Cthon to destroy Cthon. It's true, she did need Hunter and wanted her to stand by her at the end. In fact, at one point Lilith says Hunter will stand by her freely, which is what happens in that last cutscene. Maybe Lilith couldn't have explicitly said her entire plan, as Chthon would catch wind of it, being the big brother he is, so she had to stay the course, pretending to be the bad guy for the greater good of finally destroying Chthon? I mean, I'd love to believe all that, but Lilith seemed very surprised to see the blade of Chthon that Hunter was holding, and afterwards, at the end of the final battle, she even says only Chthon can kill Chthon, so what was her goal exactly? She said she was here to defeat Chthon, not free him, but she also knew she didn't have the means to do so, and acted surprised with the blade reveal? Huh? What? Did Lilith just not expect Chthon to take Hunter over after she broke off the collar? The convenient Chthon killing blade is also super Deus Ex Machina, and apparently has nothing to do with Lilith turning face at all. Crossbones, the guy who says repeatedly in combat, "I won't die," sacrifices himself and gives intel to Captain America about Red Skull projects, which eventually led to a little glass case thing where the only thing that can destroy Chthon is held. Crossbones turned against Lilith to do this, to give us this literal MacGuffin. Alright, I guess. The story just doesn't do a whole lot to make you feel like you're steadily progressing towards something, and our only successes don't feel all that great since they're so disconnected to the main goal. If the setup really was to have Lilith be behind everything, she shouldn't have been surprised to see the blade, and Crossbones shouldn't have been the one to give his life so that his buddy Steve Rogers could decode Red Skull's private diary. All that said, the first phase of the final fight is pretty neat. You've likely been focusing on building your insert character up, prioritizing their deck above others for obvious reasons, so having Hunter turn on you, pitting your own OP hero against everybody else you control, is a worthwhile subversion of expectations. Her collar has been cracking for a while now, so this was being hinted at along the way, which makes it all the better. It's one of those so obvious in retrospect moments, or maybe I'm just dumb and didn't see it coming. The collar was made for Hunter by Caretaker, her attempt at keeping Lilith's influence away from Hunter. It's paramount to Hunter staying herself and not turning evil. So says Caretaker anyway. Lilith claimed that the collar was put on Hunter to keep her in line, that Caretaker was trying to poison Hunter's mind, turning Hunter further and further against her mother. I think both are true to some extent. Hunter definitely went ballistic and tried to kill her friends at the end without the collar. Sure, it was Chthon waiting in wake, not Lilith like Caretaker thought, but yes, a bad thing did indeed happen when the collar came off. That said though, fuck Caretaker, she's the worst, and she absolutely was feeding into this "your mother is the most diabolical, heartless creature ever" mentality. Funny enough, if this was a heavy choice-driven game where you could pick sides, I would have picked Lilith's 1,000 times out of 1,000, since Caretaker is insufferable. She constantly talks down and demeans Hunter and the others when we don't do what she wants. She says no to all of their ideas, and then, when she makes a big fucking stink out of assigning Hunter as the new leader of the team, she shuts down Hunter the very next day about the new plan, the one that everybody else wants to do. What the fuck is Caretaker's goal again? Defeat a handful of Hydragoons per day in general missions until the world ends? She never offers any suggestions or alternative plans, ever. Only puts her foot down and acts like a total non-stop 24/7. Fuck Caretaker, I don't give a fuck that she's grieving over losing Agatha. Ooh, boo-hoo! Newsflash, asshole! Agatha's been here the entire goddamn time! Then why wouldn't you say anything? Because I hate you! Well, that's not why. I mean, I do hate her, but no, she's so stubborn she wouldn't have even entertained the idea that Agatha could be a ghost, and Agatha knows it, since she tells Hunter as much to not inform Caretaker of her presence. When she barges into the emo kids meeting, everyone treats her like a strict, overprotective parent, meaning she's just always like this. Literally, here's Caretaker's reaction to us opening the library door.
Just what in the hell do you think you're doing in here?
Standing in the library?
I've given you free rein so you could get back on your feet, but I never thought you'd pull something like this.
Do you see what I mean when I get so frustrated that the light side dialogue options are worrying about this bitch?
Don't be coy. It does not suit you.
That's a shitty way to end the video, since I do like this game a lot, so I'll say one or two more positives around the story events. Although on one hand, I get a little fatigued with how often characters talk of losing Wanda and Bruce Banner, those conversations come up so frequently, for real, it did feel like Nico was genuinely devastated over losing someone close to her, and the same for Tony when it came to Bruce. Instead of annoying me, given the regularity and implied lack of leading to anything for weeks, it built on itself, helping me empathize with these people. Wow, these characters aren't just completely moving on from losing their superhero friend. Crazy, what a concept. In the climax mission, the Midnight Suns assemble versus disassemble line was funny and appropriate.
Midnight Suns, assemble! Or whatever.
Yes. Midnight Suns, assemble or whatever. Midnight Suns, disassemble.
Now you're talking.
Throughout the entire game, the Midnight Suns and Avengers have been at odds and in a state of disarray, and this is them coming together and acknowledging the Avengers while also staying true to their own personalities. Lastly, and this is I suppose a positive and a negative, the final dialogue piece, where every single hero stands in a line and you can talk to them one by one, literally took me a half hour to get through. That's madness, but I suppose it's good for these relationships to have solid conclusions. But goddamn, this game has so much dialogue, am I right? Why couldn't they just do the fucking unique gift dialogue? Marvel's Midnight Suns flounders in a couple of ways, and is a little shallow in others, but overall, this game rocks and I love it. Building your deck for each hero to work in tandem with other teammates and their own cards is so rewarding, and the turn-based combat itself is surprisingly complex and manages to stay engaging the whole way through. There's so many fun gimmicks and objectives, and the game keeps adding things onto your plate up until the very end, even when it comes to your hero roster. The decision to use a lesser-known group, the Midnight Suns, as the foundation for everything is so much fun, even if some cooler entries didn't make it, like Werewolf by Night or Elsa Bloodstone, and the Avenger additions they mixed in make a lot of sense. As far as comic book collaboration stories go, this one sits alongside the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games for sure, just a great excuse to jam a bunch of unrelated heroes together. The facial animations can be a bit stiff at times, and the game overall has a lot of technical problems, but the Lifesim side as a whole, such as the dialogue and clubs and hangouts and gifts, offer a lot of charm to the game, allowing you to feel like you're really getting to know these characters with your self-insert hunter. The fact that this game exists at all is a win in and of itself. We just don't get many games outside the norm for licensed IPs, and especially not on the AAA scale like this. Maybe Firaxis is right, and this game will have a long tail and keep selling, but who knows. I doubt it'll ever convince 2K to let them do another game like this, but man would I love to see it. If this is all we'll ever get, I'm happy to have given it a shot and pushed through. Much like many of the cards you'll add to your decks when playing the game, the tactics genre and superhero backdrop come together to create a rewarding and effective combo. I'd recommend it, definitely. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. I have no idea when this video will finally come out, since it's far longer than any of the others I'm currently working on. In fact, when I wrote this, I was working on the Renegade Squadron, I was working on a Batman Arkham Asylum one that didn't happen, I was working on Army of Two, the chest video, EDF Iron Rain. That one hopefully will come after this. Goddamn, I am determined to see Midnight Suns through, though. There were so many times when I just thought, why, I can just back out anytime, it's fine, but I had so much work on it done already. Oh my god. Sorry to all the people who voted not to see modern games in my poll, but this certainly won't be the last one this year, given Dead Island 2, Dying Light 2, Star Wars Survivor, and, of course, EDF Iron Rain, and maybe EDF 6 this year. Bear with me during these trying times. I promise I'll try to get to some older games, too. Sign up to the Patreon to earn yourself, your name in the credits and a small early access to videos. Is that good enough? Probably not, but I'm just one man, and I'm a one-man band, baby. Oh, I should end this with another Marvel quote, just to piss off the liberals. With great power comes great jizz.